Chapter 876. After sending off Zhou Zhuruo, Song Qingshu was feeling a little down. Seeing his pretty sister-in-law, his mood immediately improved. He hurriedly went over to greet her. Ping, who knew that Wanyan Ping would immediately shake off his hand, causing Song Qingshu to be stunned. "Why did you use me?" Wanyan Ping's voice was as cold as ice. "I didn't." As Song Qingshu said this, he felt a little guilty. Even though he didn't write the letter to transfer her away, he knew about it from beginning to end. It was equivalent to tacitly agreeing that Wanyan Liang used his name to transfer her away. Sensing his tone, Wanyan Ping was even more disappointed. Her voice lost its former color. "Brother-in-law, ever since I was young, I adored you and even dreamed of marrying you. That night when we fell off the cliff together was the happiest night of my life. I thought I had the chance to marry you. But now, looking back, it was all a lie. You only approached me with ulterior motives. I was so stupid to believe everything was true." Song Qingshu opened his mouth and wanted to explain, but on second thought, she wasn't wrong in blaming him. He did approach her with ulterior motives. He did have ulterior motives. Wanyan Ping sighed. "All right, that's it. For now on, we're done." She turned to leave, but after taking a few steps, she suddenly stopped. "When they investigated, I didn't say that I left after receiving your letter. Be careful. Don't let the people in the palace find out." After leaving these words, Wanyan Ping didn't look back. What a good girl. Song Qingshu sighed. She knew he used her, but she still chose to hide it for him and took all the blame herself. Tang Quobian's sister-in-law was truly devoted to him. Even though it was a bit unkind, Song Qingshu still decided not to explain to her. Ending things here was a kind of closure. He couldn't live as Tang Quobian forever. One day, Wanyan Ping would learn of Tang Quobian's death. Rather than making her suffer, it was better to let her be disappointed in Tang Quobian now. Then, when she learned of Tang Quobian's death, it would be less painful. Even if Tang Quobian was in heaven, he would still want Wanyan Ping to walk out of his shadow and start a new life. Song Qingshu walked into the inner hall while thinking. Goodbye was anxiously pacing around the room. When she saw him return, she was pleasantly surprised. "You're finally back. What happened?" Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. "Something happened in the laundry yard. I was worried that you would be in danger, but I'm glad to see that you're safe." Goodbye patted her plump chest, causing Song Qingshu's eyebrows to jump. "However, I heard that Pinger is largely responsible for what happened in the laundry yard. Although Imperial Brother didn't punish her much, she has always been a headstrong person. She must be feeling very bad. I tried to persuade her, but the effect wasn't good. She has always listened to her brother-in-law since she was young, so you should find a few opportunities to comfort her." Okay. Song Qingshu was secretly surprised. It seemed that Wanyan Ping hadn't told her sister the truth. Goodbye had asked him to comfort her, but she didn't know that her sister had already severed all ties with him. "By the way, you weren't the one behind what happened in the laundry yard, were you?" Goodbye suddenly looked at him suspiciously. After all, Song Qingshu was a wanted criminal in both the Jin and Song kingdoms. It wasn't strange for such a dangerous person to do something like this. "Of course it wasn't me." Since Wanyan Ping had chosen to hide it from her, Song Qingshu hesitated and didn't tell her the truth. But this wasn't a lie. The attack on the laundry yard had been carried out by Wanyan Liang and Zhao Min's men. He had only rescued the Song dynasty princesses from their hands. When he thought of Zhao Min, Song Qingshu was filled with confusion. He hadn't noticed her existence in this period of time. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. Where was she hiding? When they were together, the two of them had tacitly avoided this question. Zhao Min didn't know that he was hiding into Xing Fu as Tang Quobian, and he didn't know where Zhao Min was hiding. The relationship between the two of them was a bit strange. They were enemies, but they were closer than normal friends. But if they were friends, the two of them were in opposing camps, so it was hard for them to be friends. But they were both intelligent people. They had tacitly reached a balance, and that was to separate public and private matters. In private, they could be close friends, but when it came to public matters, they could treat each other as enemies and carefully guard against each other. Fortunately, I usually act as Tang Quobian. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know I was tricked by Zhao Min. Song Qing was secretly vigilant. Although Zhao Min said that she came to Xing Fu to track down Murong Jingwei, he guessed that it was probably just a cover. If she really came for Murong Jingwei, she would not have only brought 2 masters, the Xianming elders. With Murong Jingyue's martial arts, the Xianming elders were more than enough to protect her. But it was too unrealistic to rely on the Xianming elders to catch Murong Jingwei. Zhao Min would never do something that she was not confident about. Therefore, Song Qingshu guessed that Zhao Min must have another purpose for this trip. Although he was not very sure, Song Qingshu could roughly guess what Zhao Min was thinking. She represented the interests of Mongolia, and naturally did not want a united and powerful Jin kingdom. If she wanted to turn the Jin kingdom upside down, the best way was to use the fight for the throne. Even Song Qingshu could see the undercurrent of the fight for the throne of the Jin kingdom. He believed that with Zhao Min's intelligence, she would definitely be able to see it too. The only question left was which king she was supporting. It was definitely impossible for Wang Yanliang. Otherwise, she would not have bumped into Ouyang Feng's group. It was also unlikely for the ever-victorious prince, Wang Yinyuan. She had hijacked the laundry yard, so Wang Yinyuan was the biggest suspect. She would not be so unwise. After eliminating these 2 possibilities, the remaining range of possibilities was greatly reduced. However, during this period of time, Song Qingshu's main focus had been on the imperial palace and Wang Yanliang. He did not know much about the other princes in the capital, so he could not think of any clues in such a short time. While Song Qingshu was in a dilemma, in a quiet courtyard in King Su's mansion, Zhao Min was also thinking about a similar problem. From the incident at the laundry, Song Qingshu has probably been lurking in Daxing Mansion for a long time. But why did I not notice anything? Where is he hiding? Wang Yanliang? Impossible. He and Ouyang Feng were obviously on different sides. Wang Yuan? Impossible. If something happened to the laundry, Wang Yuan would be in big trouble. Among the other kings, Zhao Min was having a headache thinking about it. She could not figure out where Song Qingshu could be hiding. Later, the image of Song Qingshu and Zhou Zhiruo hugging each other kept appearing in her mind. Her expression suddenly became ugly. They are the legitimate husband and wife. I'm just an outsider. Zhao Min smashed a teacup. Only then did the pent-up anger in her heart slightly ease. The sound of the teacup breaking alarmed the servant girls outside. They hurriedly ran in. Miss, what are your orders? Nothing. You may leave. Zhao Min waved her hand. Looking at the backs of these pretty and charming maidservants as they left, her heart suddenly stirred. Wait a moment. The maidservants immediately stopped and looked at her in confusion. What famous beauties are there in Daxing Mansion? It turned out that Zhao Min had an idea. She thought of Song Qingshu's dissolute personality. He always had a lot of beautiful women by his side. Why didn't she start from this angle? Perhaps she would have an unexpected harvest. The servant girls looked at each other and confirmed the question again. Then they answered hesitantly. Although there are many beauties in Daxing Mansion, they are not as beautiful as Mississippi. Zhao Min was instantly furious. I'm asking you a question. Stop flattering me. Yes. The servant girls finally came back to their senses. There are countless beauties in Daxing Mansion. They are of all ages. What does Miss want to ask? Choose the most famous beauties. Zhao Min knew that Song Qingshu was surrounded by beautiful women. Ordinary beauties would not be able to attract his attention. As for their age, they should be in their teens to 30s. As a Mongolian noble, Zhao Min was used to the special hobbies of many men. Some of them liked younger girls. However, after interacting with Song Qingshu for a while, she knew that although he was lustful, he was not that much of a beast. As for the older ones, they should be in their 30s. If they were over 40, Song Qingshu did not have such a hardcore taste. Zhao Min and Song Qingshu had not been together for a long time. However, she had to admit that she had a very accurate grasp of Song Qingshu's hobbies. After obtaining the specific scope, the maidservants began to speak one after another. Empress Peiman is a great beauty. Although the Empress is beautiful, it is more because of her special identity. In terms of appearance, Princess Goodbye is the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. But I heard that Princess Changsheng is as beautiful as Princess Goodbye. She was even given the title of Lady Peach Blossom by His Majesty. The Grand Preceptor's daughter-in-law, Pucha Elihu, was also the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. Elihu is a little old. Compared to the younger Princess Goodbye and Lady Peach Blossom, he is inevitably at a disadvantage. But it is said that her daughter, Wanyan Zhongjia, is going to surpass her. In a few years, Princess Goodbye and Lady Peach Blossom might not be as beautiful as her. Zhao Min silently read the names of these women. Empress Peiman, Princess Goodbye, Lady Peach Blossom, Pucha Elihu, and his daughter. Is there anyone else? The servant girls hurriedly replied. The others are slightly less famous. For example, Miss Cho Chao of the Pucha family, Princess Wanyan Ping of the Qi Kingdom, and Consort Hailing. Our consort Su is not bad either. Of course, they're all famous beauties in the capital. Chapter 877. Zhao Min chased the maids out and took out a piece of paper to write down the names of Princess Goodbye, Lady Peach Blossom, and Wanyan Zhongjia. She crossed off Lady Peach Blossom's name first because, according to her previous analysis, Song Qing was obviously not in cahoots with Chongqing Prince. Lady Peach Blossom was Chongqing Prince's wife, so of course she was excluded first. After hesitating for a while, she crossed off Goodbye's name. These years, Princess Goodbye and Tang Quobian had a deep relationship. It would be difficult for Song Qing to get involved. Looking at the last name on the paper, Zhao Min fell into deep thought. After a while, she shouted outside the door, "Call the Xianming elders here." "Your Highness, the Xianming elders are recuperating. Would it be inappropriate to call them at this time?" A subordinate's voice came from outside the door. Zhao Min was slightly startled. Only then did she remember that the two of them were injured in the laundry yard. She couldn't help but twitch her mouth and mumble to herself, "Two useless people." After hesitating for a while, Zhao Min directly ordered the person outside, "Go pick a few people with high martial arts skills and kidnap the granddaughter of the Grand Preceptor, Wanyan Zhongjia. Everything must be done in secret." "Yes, Your Highness." Listening to the gradually fading footsteps outside the door, Zhao Min smiled slightly. If Song Qing was really related to Wanyan Zhongjia, then he would definitely think of a way to save her if he knew she was kidnapped. If that happened, then their whereabouts would be exposed as she thought about it. Zhao Min's face suddenly darkened. This bastard surnamed Song. Everywhere he went, he would fool around. Why didn't Zhou Zhirua care about him? How ridiculous. Achoo! Song Qing was chatting with Goodbye when he suddenly sneezed. He couldn't help but rub his nose. "Did you catch a cold? I'll ask the servants to make a bowl of ginger soup for you." Goodbye hurriedly said, "No need. I'm very healthy. You know that." Song Qing patted his chest loudly. "You scoundrel." Goodbye spat and returned to the inner hall with a red face. Song Qing was left standing there in a daze. "How am I a scoundrel?" Song Qing cried out. Suddenly, a servant ran over and said, "There's a letter here for you." "Letter? Who sent it?" Song Qing took the envelope with a puzzled expression. There were only a few words on the envelope. "To Tang Quobian." "I don't know. I didn't see it clearly." "Got it. You can leave now." Song Qing pinched the envelope. It didn't seem to be a trap. With his current cultivation, common poisons couldn't hurt him. He opened the envelope and saw a few words inside. "Come to the Cool Breeze Gang quickly." The Cool Breeze Gang was a famous restaurant in the capital. Song Qing hesitated for a moment and read the whole letter over and over again. He couldn't find any clues from the handwriting, so he decided to go to the Cool Breeze Gang. On one hand, he was very curious about who had sent the letter. On the other hand, he was skilled and bold, so he was not afraid of any ambush. After giving a few instructions to the servant, Song Qing hurriedly went out. He had never seen the handwriting on the letter before, so it shouldn't have been written by someone he knew. Judging from the strokes, the words were slightly graceful, so it was very likely that it was written by a woman. However, Song Qing wasn't sure about this. After all, he was a complete layman when it came to calligraphy. It was possible that this was a special handwriting. Song Qing was lost in thought. Without realizing it, he passed by a remote alley. This alley was the only way to get to the Cool Breeze gang from Tranquil's mansion. However, it had always been deserted, so it looked very secluded. Suddenly, Song Qing felt a sense of foreboding and quickly dodged to the side. A cold light had already streaked past the place where he was standing just a moment ago. The other party had obviously anticipated his reaction. After he dodged the attack, the other party did not hesitate at all. The short sword in his hand slashed across the air and chased after Song Qing like a maggot on a tarsal bone. At this time, Song Qing also saw the attacker clearly. The attacker was completely covered in black clothes. However, he didn't have time to think. The attacker's sword was already coming at him without any pause. In Song Qing's eyes, there were still many flaws in the swordsmanship of the black-clothed man. However, there was a unique sharpness in his moves. If an ordinary martial artist were to encounter this storm-like attack, even if he didn't die, he would still lose a layer of skin. Song Qing dodged 3 steps in a row. Finally, he found a flaw in the black-clothed man's swordsmanship and caught the tip of the sword with his fingers. The man was shocked and pushed the sword forward, trying to cut off 2 of Song Qing's fingers. Song Qing's fingers slid across the blade of the sword. The man's hand trembled and couldn't hold the short sword in his hand anymore. Song Qing took the opportunity to jump into the man's arms and hit the man's chest with his elbow. This man's attack was full of killing moves. Song Qing naturally wouldn't be polite. If this hit the man's chest, at least half of his ribs would be broken. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to keep the man alive for questioning, he would have taken the man's life. Ouch! A crisp and tender cry of pain rang out. Song Qing also felt the soft touch on his elbow. He couldn't help but frown. In a flash, he changed the direction of the attack to a point and sealed the man's vital acupoints. Then, he put the blade of the sword across the man's neck. "Who are you?" Song Qing asked in a low voice. Now that he knew the other party was a woman, he couldn't bring himself to be ruthless. Although he had suffered at the hands of a woman not long ago, it was difficult to change his nature of having tender and protective feelings for the fair sex. Who would have thought that the black-clothed man would turn his head away, as if he hadn't heard Song Qing's words? Song Qing didn't stand on ceremony. He pulled off her veil, revealing a young and inexperienced face that couldn't hide its peerless beauty. "How come it's you?" This young woman was the man he had met a few times before, Wanyan Zhongjia. "Why can't it be me?" Wanyan Zhongjia snorted angrily. Song Qing suddenly understood. "No wonder I thought your eyes looked familiar. So you are the mysterious assassin who tried to assassinate Wanyan Liang. You still have the nerve to say that." Hearing him mention this matter, Wanyan Zhongjia immediately became angry. "If you hadn't ruined my plans time and time again, I would have already killed Wanyan Liang." "You have a grudge against Wanyan Liang?" Song Qing asked suspiciously. If the other party really did have a grudge against Wanyan Liang, then it wouldn't be good for him to make a move. The enemy of an enemy could very well be a friend. "Why do you care?" Wanyan Zhongjia pouted and retorted. Song Qing was immediately angered and amused. "Although your martial arts are good, Wanyan Liang has many experts by his side. Fortunately, you met me on those 2 occasions. Otherwise, you would have been captured long ago. Also, please understand your situation. Right now, you are my captive. Be polite when you speak." "A captive is a captive," Wanyan Zhongjia said carelessly. "Hurry up and unseal my acupoints." Song Qing couldn't help but chuckle. "You want me to unseal them just because you want me to? Why should I?" Chapter 878. Song Qing Shu looked embarrassed and gloomy. "I didn't know you were a woman. Now that you know, why don't you let go?" Wanyan Zhongjia snorted, her cheeks turning pink. Song Qing Shu sheepishly retracted his hand. He was also very unhappy that a young lady had rebuked him. He couldn't help but say, "Tisk, such small breasts. Do you think I want to touch them?" "What did you say?" Wanyan Zhongjia's eyes almost spat fire. "Nothing. I said a good man doesn't fight with a woman." In terms of roguishness, Song Qing Shu could be said to be the ancestor of roguishness. How could he be fooled by a little girl? Square root v. Square root Wanyan Zhongjia suffered a loss in silence. Looking at Song Qingshu's roguish expression, she knew that it wouldn't do her any good to continue bickering. With a straight face, she said, "Hurry up and unseal my acupoints." Song Qingshu hesitated for a while, but still decided to unseal her acupoints. First, she was Gobai's niece. Even if he didn't want to give her face, he still had to give her face. Second, with his martial arts, he wasn't afraid that she would cause any trouble. Wanyan Zhongjie was shocked when she saw that Song Qingshu had unsealed her acupoints just like that. However, she didn't show it. She stretched her arms and waved at him. "Okay, come with me to kill Wanyan Liang." Song Qingshu was so angry that he laughed. "Why should I go with you to kill Wanyan Liang?" "Because I know your secret." Wanyan Zhongjie turned around and smiled sweetly at him. He had to admit that although she was young, she already had a captivating charm. "What secret?" Song Qingshu asked without batting an eyelid. Wanyan Zhongjie held her hands behind her back and circled around him, sizing him up. After a long time, she opened her thin lips and said, "Because you aren't my uncle, tranquil." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat as he replied expressionlessly, "I don't understand what you're talking about." Wanyan Zhongjie smiled and said, "The last time you tried to assassinate Wanyan Liang, you caught my sword between your two fingers. At that time, I was very suspicious. Although Tang Quobian is skilled with the bow and the horse, that's all on horseback. He doesn't know the martial arts of Jianghu. Afterwards, I went to investigate and found that no one had ever heard of Tang Quobian practicing martial arts. In order to confirm it, I ambushed you again just now. Sure enough, it proves that your martial arts are unfathomable. Then tell me, how can you be Tang Quobian? If I'm not Tang Quobian, who am I?" Song Qingshu had a headache. At that time, he had carelessly revealed his martial arts, and in the end, he was seen through by Gobai and her. It was really a miscalculation. Wanyan Zhongjie shook his head. "I don't know who you are, and I don't want to know. I just need you to help me kill Wanyan Liang, and I will keep your secret." "And if I don't help?" Song Qingshu said coldly. "You are pretending to be Tang Quobian because you want to use his identity to plan something big. If the whole capital finds out that you are a fake, how will you accomplish your goal?" Wanyan Zhongjie smiled. "Let's not talk about others. Let's talk about my aunt, who is known as the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. How will she react when she finds out the truth? If her pursuers find out that their goddess has been sleeping with a wild man, how will they react? Let me give you a friendly reminder. At least 1/3 of the nobles in the capital were my aunt's pursuers. You should think about the consequences." Before Wanyan Zhongjie could finish speaking, he felt his vision blur, and then his whole body was pressed against the wall. The hand around her throat was like an iron hoop, making it hard for her to breathe. Song Qingshu looked at her calmly and said in a cold voice, "If I kill you, everything will be over." After the initial panic, Wanyan Zhongjie had now calmed down. He looked back at him calmly. "Did you think that I came to see you alone without any preparations?" "What do you mean?" Song Qingshu was stunned. "I knew that I was meeting an extremely dangerous person. How could I come unprepared?" Wanyan Zhongjie's lips curled into a mocking smile. "I already made the appropriate arrangements. If I didn't return on time, the whole capital would know that you were pretending to be Tang Quobian. How capable can a little girl like you be? I'll kill you and find your contact. Then, I'll kill him and everything will be fine." Song Qingshu was unmoved as he said, "You don't even know who my contact is. How are you going to kill him?" Although Wanyan Zhongjie was young, he was not intimidated. "Even if I tell you, you won't be able to find him." "Oh, I don't believe you." Song Qingshu deliberately provoked him. "You don't have to provoke me. If I tell you, I won't be afraid of you finding him." Wanyan Zhongjie snorted. "Every 3 days I go to the street to find a Tonghulu seller. When he sees me, he will know that everything is fine and your secret will not be leaked. There are so many Tonghulu sellers in the capital. Even if you know, you won't be able to find him." Song Qingshu frowned, suddenly realizing the flaw in her story. You're obviously lying to me. You're a noble lady. How can you show yourself in public so often? What if you have something to do that day? For example, the palace summons you and you can't meet the Tonghulu seller?" Unexpectedly, Wanyan Zhongjie did not panic at all. She calmly replied, I made an agreement with that person. If I suddenly have something to do and can't go, he will send someone else. When the time comes, as long as I match his secret signal, it means that I'm fine. What was the secret signal you agreed on? Song Qing-shu tightened his grip. Wanyan Zhongjia's small face immediately flushed red. The person I sent would ask him, how much is the Tonghulu? And he would reply, 3 taels of gold and 3 taels of silver for a skewer. The person I sent would reply, it's so cheap. I'll pay 5 taels of gold and 5 taels of silver. Then the person would know that I'm safe and sound. Song Qing-shu frowned. Why did this sound like Tian Di Huey's plan? Releasing her neck, Song Qing-shu said in a low voice, I keep feeling that you're lying to me. How could you possibly tell me the secret signal? Of course I'm lying to you. Wanyan Zhongjie covered her neck and gasped for breath. That Tonghulu and that secret signal are all fake. I wouldn't be so stupid as to tell you the real thing. I just wanted to use this method to let you understand that even though I'm young, I have a lot of experience in Jianghu. I've long since made preparations to be foolproof. Fine, you win. Song Qing-shu said indifferently. Although he still doubted whether Wanyan Zhongjie was telling the truth, he couldn't take any risks. Why do you want to kill Wanyan Liang? Song Qing-shu suddenly asked. You don't need to worry about that. You just need to help me kill him. As Wanyan Zhongjie spoke, she tore off her black clothes and threw them to the side, revealing a green maiden's dress. She then pulled Song Qing-shu and walked out of the alley. Her hand was soft and cold. Song Qing-shu was slightly startled and asked, Where are we going? The Cool Breeze brothel. Wanyan Liang is drinking there today. The guards around him are much weaker than usual, Wanyan Zhongjie replied without turning her head. You want to make a move today? Song Qing-shu groaned inwardly. He had originally planned to temporarily agree to her request and calm her down. Who knew that she would make a move so soon? He didn't really care about Wanyan Liang's life or death. What he cared about was how the upper echelons of the Jin Kingdom would redistribute their power after Wanyan Liang's death. It wasn't easy for him to find an opportunity to intervene in the upper echelons of the Jin Kingdom. He still needed time to make arrangements. If Wanyan Liang died now, he wouldn't be able to find such a good opportunity again. Song Qing-shu was hesitating whether he should use the soul transfer technique to control her and slowly ask her for information about the contact. Suddenly, his vision darkened. Looking up, he saw a group of fierce-looking people blocking the alley in front of him. Miss Zhongjie, the leader asked. Wanyan Zhongjie frowned slightly and asked, You are? My master wants to see you, the leader replied. Who is your master? Wanyan Zhongjie subconsciously took a step back. Miss Zhongjie, you'll know when you arrive, the leader replied coldly. I'm not interested in people who hide their heads and show their tails. Zhongjie pulled Song Qing-shu along as they walked back. However, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard. Several people had already jumped behind them and blocked their path of retreat. What is the meaning of this? Zhongjie's expression changed. We are just following orders. Please don't make things difficult for us. Although the leader's expression was respectful, he didn't seem to be polite at all. It seems that you have a lot of wild bees and lascivious butterflies by your side. Song Qing-shu couldn't wait for someone to come and cause trouble. At this time, he was rejoicing in Zhongjie's misfortune. Zhongjie shook her head slightly and whispered in his ear, These people are all experts. They aren't like the hedonistic young masters in the capital who can order them around. It seems that they have come with ill intentions. I'll leave them to you. Song Qing-shu was startled and asked, Why don't you do it yourself? Although Zhongjie's martial arts weren't good enough in front of him, he would still be considered a top-notch expert in Jianghu. He was more than enough to deal with these martial artists. Zhongjie explained in a low voice, No one in the capital knows that I know martial arts. I also don't know who's behind them. If I reveal my martial arts and Wanyan Liang hears about it, he might connect it to the previous assassination attempts. I can't take this risk. Song Qing-shu was very depressed and said, Everyone knows that Tang Quobian doesn't know martial arts. I revealed my martial arts once, and you caught me. How could I dare to do it a second time? If I don't do it, and you don't do it, then are we just going to let them capture us? Wanyan Zhongjia's eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. If we get captured, then we get captured. Song Qingshu had thought things through. If he dealt with these people, Gubai would immediately send him to assassinate Wanyan Liang. He was worried about this matter and would only act now if he were an idiot. Chapter 879. Sister Zhongjia, please get on the sedan chair. The group of warriors slowly surrounded her, as if they would use force if she showed even the slightest sign of refusal. What? Wanyan Liang struggled for a long time, but in the end, she gave up the idea of attacking. After all, she didn't know who was behind them, and it would be too dangerous to expose her martial arts skills. Before killing Wanyan Liang, she had to maintain the image of a harmless rabbit. I can get on the sedan chair, but I want him to accompany me. Wanyan Liang suddenly pointed at Song Qingshu. This group of people had only brought one palanquin. It was clear that they had intended to invite her alone. They hadn't expected that she would have companions with her. Wanyan Zhongjia had done this on purpose to remind this group of warriors that if they decided to silence her, Song Qingshu would have no choice but to act. Song Qingshu frowned and instantly understood what she was planning. Just as he was considering whether or not to act, he heard the warriors say, "No problem. Get on the sedan chair." Not only was Song Qingshu stunned, but even Wanyan Zhongjia was stunned. This sedan chair was obviously designed for a single person to sit in. There might be some space for one person, but it would be too crowded for two people. She asked incredulously, "You want me to squeeze with him?" The leader slightly frowned. "Sister Zhongjia, please get on the sedan chair." Beside him, Song Qingshu was instantly amused. He gave up on the idea of making a move and instead became a little curious about the master behind these people. Thus, he happily crawled into the palanquin and sat down inside. Wanyan Zhongjia's eyes widened. She pointed at the sedan chair and said angrily, "Look at this. How can two people sit in such a small sedan chair?" "It's not a problem to squeeze a little." The leader's face became somewhat impatient. "Are you going to sit or not?" Wanyan Zhongjia took a deep breath and calmed herself down. "I'll sit." She was very curious about the mastermind behind this, but she didn't dare to reveal her trump card before finding out everything. However, Song Qingshu was sitting inside like a lord, leaving almost no space. Wanyan Zhongjia rolled his eyes at him and said, "Make way. I've always liked to sit like this since I was young. If you can't squeeze in, you can sit on my lap. I won't mind." Song Qingshu was completely indifferent to the girl's request. Wanyan Zhongjia was so anxious that he laughed. "Go and ask around. How many men in the capital want to hug me? How many of them have succeeded? If you want to take advantage of me, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush." Song Qingshu curled his lips in disdain. "Who would want to take advantage of a little girl like you? Your breasts are like steamed buns, and you don't even have a lot of meat on your body. What's the use of having a pretty face? I'd rather hug you and knock you down." Wanyan Zhongjia was so angry that he almost fainted. Apart from her chest, the rest of her body was perfect. Who knew how many men drooled over her? Was this bastard blind or not? Because she had already entered the palanquin, the people outside couldn't see what was going on inside. They thought she was already seated and quickly set off with the palanquin. As soon as the palanquin was lifted, Wanyan Zhongjia lost her balance and stumbled into Song Qingshu's arms. Song Qingshu raised his hands, indicating that he hadn't touched her, and said, "Hey, you're the one who took the initiative to take advantage of me." Wanyan Zhongjia had never been so close to a man before, let alone fallen into his arms. She quickly explained with a red face, "You bastard, they suddenly lifted the palanquin and I didn't stand properly." Song Qingshu sneered, "You're a martial arts expert. If this vibration makes your lower body unsteady, do you think you're lying to a 3-year-old? If you want to take advantage of me, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush." Wanyan Zhongjia hadn't expected the tables to turn so quickly. Her opponent had used her own words to mock her. She didn't know how to explain herself, so she decided to act shamelessly. "So what if I want to take advantage of you? Get out of the way." As she spoke, she moved his thigh to the other side and squeezed herself into that fleeting space. "Hey, you're squeezing so tightly that I can feel the heat from your body. You're a girl. Aren't you ashamed? Song Qingshu couldn't help but remind her. According to seniority, you're my uncle. What's wrong with sitting with an elder? Wanyan Zhongjia rolled her eyes and didn't want to continue talking about this topic. She asked, "Who do you think their master is?" "How would I know?" Seeing the anger in her eyes, Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile. "But I know that their master is most likely a woman." "Why?" Wanyan Zhongjia asked curiously. One had to know that these people had suddenly appeared outside, and she was still confused. How did Song Qingshu know the gender of these people? Song Qingshu pointed at the two of them, who were tightly pressed against each other. "If their master was a man, they definitely wouldn't have the guts to squeeze me into the same sedan chair as you." Wanyan Zhongjia instantly understood. If a man had kidnapped her, it was most likely because of her beauty. Under these circumstances, if these people allowed another man to take advantage of her, wouldn't they be causing trouble for their master? Only if their master was a woman would they not hesitate to lock the two of them together. Who is this bastard? Why does he have such sharp perception? Wanyan Zhongjia secretly glanced at Song Qingshu's face. Song Qingshu, however, was lost in thought. A woman? Is it Zhao Min? He also knew that this kind of speculation was too hasty. Even if a woman wanted to kidnap Wanyan Zhongjia, it could very well be out of jealousy or because her man was infatuated with Zhongjia and she wanted revenge. But his first reaction was still to think of Zhao Min. There's no point in thinking too much. Song Qingshu quickly gave up on all sorts of guesses and closed his eyes to rest. Wanyan Zhongjia, who was at the side, was infuriated when he saw this. However, he quickly admired Song Qingshu's calm demeanor. Perhaps it was because he was infected by Song Qingshu's emotions, but he quickly calmed down and imitated Song Qingshu, closing his eyes to rest. After an unknown amount of time, the sedan chair suddenly shook and Wanyan Zhongjia opened her eyes. She couldn't help but be secretly surprised that she had actually fallen asleep. She had been too careless. When she opened her eyes, she realized that she had unknowingly rested her head on the shoulder of the man next to her. Noticing that there was a water stain on his clothes, she subconsciously wiped the corner of her mouth, and her face instantly turned red. "This is too embarrassing. I actually drooled while asleep. I hope he didn't find out." Wanyan Zhongjia raised her head in alarm and happened to see Song Qingshu's expression. Her body immediately stiffened, and she hurriedly raised her fist. "You are not allowed to tell anyone about what happened just now. Otherwise, I will also reveal your secret." Chapter 880. It turned out that the reason why the palanquin had vibrated was because they had arrived at their destination. Along the way, Song Qingshu had the intention to observe their route, but the palanquin had been specially treated and had no windows. Other than the front door, the rest of the palanquin was completely sealed. Since he couldn't see the scenery outside, Song Qingshu was happy to be at ease and simply rested from beginning to end. Even when the palanquin had arrived at its destination, he still didn't know where he was. However, when he heard the voice of the woman outside, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. "I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance." Soon, someone opened the palanquin door. Wanyan Zhongjia was curious about the other party's identity and quickly walked out. When she saw the woman's appearance, she couldn't help but be stunned. Her mother was the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom in the past, and she was also recognized as the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom in the next generation. Wanyan Zhongjia was very confident in her appearance, but the woman in front of her had a rosy complexion and radiance. She was very beautiful, but she also had a heroic spirit. At the same time, she was graceful and dignified. She had a dignified air that made people feel deep veneration and not dare to stare at her. "This beautiful big sister has especially invited me over. May I know what's the matter?" Wanyan Zhongjia quickly came to her senses. She was in a dangerous situation and didn't have the time to admire the other party's beauty. She used the opportunity to ask questions to look around, but when she realized where she was, she couldn't help but frown. She had originally thought that the palanquin would stop at the door or in the courtyard, but now that she was surrounded by dark stone walls, it was obvious that she was in a secret room. "Sister Zhongjia, You remain calm in the face of danger. I admire you very much." The woman's smile suddenly froze because she realized that there was someone else in the palanquin. "Who is he?" The woman frowned and looked at her subordinate. "Miss Zhao, this is the son-in-law, Tranquil. He was with Sister Zhongjia just now. His identity is special, so it wasn't convenient to deal with him. I was afraid that the news would leak, so I invited him back." "The son-in-law? Is he Princess Gubai's husband?" Miss Zhao asked hurriedly. "That's me. Could it be that Miss Zhao is acquainted with my madam?" Before the subordinate could speak, Song Qingshu walked out of the sedan chair and looked at Miss Zhao with a playful expression. It seemed that his guess was right. The master behind them was indeed Zhao Min. Princess Gubai is the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom. I have long heard of you, but unfortunately, I have never had the chance to meet you. Zhao Min had already come back to her senses at this time. Although she was a little surprised that there was one more person, she had originally planned to investigate Gubai. It was just right for her husband to bump into her. "That's a pity. You two should get along very well." After coming down, Song Qingshu also casually looked around and saw the same scene as Wanyan Zhongjia. He was also shocked and secretly guessed where this place was. Zhao Min looked at him in confusion. For a moment, she seemed to see someone familiar, but this feeling came and went quickly. She quickly returned to normal and asked, "What does the son-in-law know that my surname is Zhao?" Song Qingshu was shocked and pointed at one of her subordinates. "Didn't he just call you Miss Zhao?" "Oh." Zhao Min nodded noncommittally. Seeing this, Song Qingshu was very glad that someone really did call him that. Otherwise, he would have really let it slip. However, before he could finish his joy, Zhao Min said coldly, "Seal his acupoints and tie him up." "Ah!" Song Qingshu was stunned. His thoughts raced as he tried to figure out where he had exposed himself. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of anything wrong, so he could only restrain his impulse. At this time, Zhao Min's subordinates had already come forward to seal his acupoints. With Song Qingshu's current cultivation, it was very simple for him to change acupoints. He let the other side seal his acupoints and then tie him up. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. "Did I offend Miss Zhao?" "No, but this young lady will interrogate you alone later. I'm a delicate woman, so I have to be careful." Zhao Min smiled sweetly. She was going to interrogate the two of them about Song Qingshu later. She didn't want Su Wang's subordinates to hear it, so she would drive everyone else out of the room. Her martial arts was not high, but it was not low either. It was more than enough to deal with a young lady. However, Song Qingshu's current appearance was full of sideburns, and he was impressively a powerful man, so she naturally had to be on guard. Song Qingshu rolled his eyes when he heard this. He thought to himself, "You always call yourself a weak woman, but in reality, countless men are no match for you. You're really thick-skinned." Fortunately, the shackles on his body couldn't really bind him. Song Qingshu didn't care too much and just wanted to see what medicine she had up her sleeve. Seeing that he had calmed down so quickly, Zhao Min's eyes flashed with a hint of praise. "Prince Consort, you really have a good bearing. No wonder you are favored by the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom." Song Qingshu smiled faintly and didn't reply. Instead, Wanyan Zhongjia, who was beside him, interrupted, "Beautiful sister, he is tall and sturdy, so it doesn't matter if he is tied up. However, I have soft skin and tender flesh, so there's no need to tie me up." Zhao Min nodded her head slightly. According to the information she had, Wanyan Zhongjia didn't know any martial arts. She herself had learned from various famous martial arts masters, so her martial arts would be passable in Jianghu. Seeing the young lady's pitiful expression, she agreed. Song Qingshu, who was watching from the side, laughed inwardly. An old fox had met another fox. This time, Zhao Min was going to suffer a loss. He was well aware of their martial arts. Although Zhao Min's martial arts weren't bad, Wanyan Zhongjia's was better. After all, Wanyan Liang had dared to assassinate so many experts and bodyguards. Coupled with the fact that Wanyan Zhongjia was unprepared, in a moment, Zhao Min, seeing that Song Qingshu was already tied to the wall, Zhao Min waved her hand, indicating for her subordinates to leave. After all of them had left, Wanyan Zhongjie asked, "Sister Zhao, you spent so much effort to find me. What is the matter?" "Actually, it's nothing much. I just want to ask you about someone," Zhao Min replied. "Who is it that you want to ask about?" Wanyan Zhongjie was startled. She had thought of many possibilities, and every one of them was directed at her. However, she had never expected the answer to be this. Who was more important than her? Song Qing-shu, Zhao Min said word by word. Song Qing-shu, who was tied to the side, felt his heart skip a beat. He knew that Zhao Min would definitely investigate him, but he hadn't expected that she would use such a method to investigate him. At this time, he couldn't help but sigh. Zhao Min had racked her brains to find out about him, but in the end, he had found her first. Although this was a secret room, as soon as he left, Song Qing-shu would know where this place was. At that time, he would know which Prince Zhao Min was hiding behind. Song Qing-shu. Wanyan Zhongjie wrinkled his nose. This name sounds familiar. Zhao Min's face lit up. "You know about him?" "I remember now." Wanyan Zhongjie slapped her forehead. "He's the Golden Snake King who caused such a stir in the Qing Kingdom in Shandong. I heard that he single-handedly destroyed the Qing army of 100,000. I've long wanted to meet such a great hero." Although the Jin and Qing were allies, Wanyan Zhongjie's father and grandfather had been killed because they were involved in the power struggle of the Jin. She and her mother were left to be bullied. As a result, she didn't have much affection for the Jin. On the contrary, she hated all of them. When she heard that Song Qing-shu had beaten the Qing army so badly that even the Jin court was shaken, she was naturally happy. Song Qing-shu had a strange expression on his face. He thought to himself that the rumors were really powerful. He had clearly used the thunderstorm to obstruct the charge of a few thousand Qing cavalrymen, and in the end, he had to rely on the Golden Snake Battalion to completely annihilate them. How could it be that he had single-handedly defeated the Qing army? 100,000 soldiers. Even if they stood there for me to chop, I wouldn't be able to kill them all in 3 days and 3 nights. Zhao Min frowned. "You don't know him? Should I know him?" Wanyan Zhongjie was also surprised. Zhao Min carefully looked at her expression and saw that she didn't seem to be lying. She continued to ask, "Think about it carefully. Did you know anyone during this time? Or did anyone strange appear around you?" "No, it's the same as before. There's no one suspicious," Wanyan Zhongjie replied bluntly. "Think about it carefully. He must have appeared around you." Zhao Min took a sip of tea and said calmly. Wanyan Zhongjie was puzzled. "Sister Zhao, why are you so sure that he appeared around me? I've only seen his name on the court bulletin and occasionally heard my friends talk about him. But he's far away in Shandong and has nothing to do with me. Why would he appear around me?" Song Qing-shu nodded his head repeatedly. He was clearly curious as to why Zhao Min was investigating him and Wanyan Zhongjie. Zhao Min placed the teacup on the table and angrily said, "Because that scoundrel has a special trait. Wherever he goes, he hooks up with the prettiest girl there." "What?" Song Qing-shu almost fell to the ground. This reason was too nonsensical. Wanyan Zhongjie was startled at first, but then he giggled. "Sister's way of thinking is quite unique. But I'm quite happy that my appearance has gained your approval." Zhao Min frowned. "Sister Zhongjie, perhaps you don't understand the current situation. No one knows that you're here. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, I won't let you go." Chapter 881. Zhao Min's beautiful face paled, and she hurriedly raised her hand to defend herself. However, her martial arts were not as good as Wanyan Zhongjie's. In addition, the other party was not prepared for this. Just as she raised her hand, her throat was grabbed. Her heart sank. "Is Min Teamer, going to die here quietly today?" Wanyan Zhongjie had just grabbed Zhao Min's neck when Song Qing-shu grabbed his wrist. Glaring at him, she asked, "Why are you grabbing me?" Song Qing-shu secretly wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. Fortunately, he was prepared. If Zhao Min's neck had been broken because of a moment of carelessness, it would have been too late for him to cry. There's no hurry to kill her. If we can't get out, we can use her as a hostage. That's true. Wanyan Zhongjie nodded and sealed Zhao Min's acupoints. You actually know martial arts? Zhao Min was still in a state of shock. Everyone in the capital thought that she was just a girl without the strength to truss a chicken. Who would have guessed that she was actually hiding such a high level of martial arts? At the same time, Zhao Min suddenly felt an irrepressible urge to ask Song Qingshu to teach her martial arts the next time she saw him. I've just been bullied by Zhou Zhiruo, and now I'm being bullied by another girl. How infuriating. You didn't expect this, did you? Wanyan Zhongjie proudly raised his chin, his eyes curved into crescent moons. I miscalculated, but I don't really care about you. Zhao Min suddenly looked at Song Qingshu with a puzzled expression. Didn't my subordinates seal his acupoints and lock him up? Why? That's because his martial arts are much higher than mine. How could your scrap metal lock him up? Hearing Wanyan Zhongjie's reply, Zhao Min's expression changed. Tang Quobian is also an expert? Stop talking nonsense. Who are you? I've been in the capital for so many years. How come I've never heard of a family with a Miss Zhao? Wanyan Zhongjie pinched Zhao Min's chin and turned her head around. A hint of anger flashed across Zhao Min's face, but she quickly concealed it. She replied with a smile, Sister Zhongjie, I treated you quite well just now. Is this how you repay me? Wanyan Zhongjie curled his lips in disdain and said, That's because you're stupid. Zhao Min's smile froze, and she was rendered speechless. Don't change the subject. Just who are you? Wanyan Zhongjie impatiently asked. Zhao Min was infuriated and turned her head away. Were you the one behind the incident at the laundry yard? Zhao Min still didn't answer. Wanyan Zhongjie became impatient and said, Are you serious? Do you believe that I won't scratch your pretty face? You wouldn't dare. If you dare to hurt a single hair on my head, you won't be able to leave this place alive. Zhao Min looked at her and said coldly, Are you trying to scare me? Wanyan Zhongjie frowned and looked around. Her expression changed. She had just noticed that this was a secret room, but now that she looked around, there wasn't even a door. How was she supposed to get out? Seeing her reaction, Zhao Min sneered and said, What do you think? Wanyan Zhongjie rolled her eyes and said in a cute voice, Good sister, how about this? If you take us out, we'll let you go. From then on, we'll go our separate ways. How about it? Zhao Min snorted disdainfully and said, Are you stupid, or do you think I'm stupid? You tried so hard to hide the fact that you know martial arts. Now that I know, how can you let me go? Song Qingshu looked at her in admiration and thought that she was indeed Zhao Min. Even in this kind of situation, she was still able to clearly analyze the situation. Seeing that he couldn't fool Zhao Min, Wanyan Zhongjie gave up on pretending and said in a cold voice, If you let us go, you might be able to live. If you don't, I'll scratch your face. TSK, TSK, TSK. I'm sure many men like your pretty face. For example, that Song Qingshu you just mentioned? Hearing Song Qingshu's name, Zhao Min's expression changed and her eyes became complicated. If you dare to touch a single hair on my head, you won't be able to walk out of here. Even if you're lucky enough to get out, he'll avenge me. Are you the prince consort? She looked at Song Qingshu with a smile that wasn't a smile. How would I know? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Zhao Min had figured out his identity? That's impossible. At most, it's just a suspicion. She's probably just testing me. Carefully observing his expression, Zhao Min saw that he didn't reveal anything strange. A trace of confusion flashed across her face. Wanyan Zhongjie suddenly became impatient. He stretched out his fingernails and started scratching her face. I don't have much patience. I'll count to 3. If you still don't tell me how to get out, don't blame me for being impolite. Zhao Min pursed her lips and didn't reply. 1, 2, 3. Song Qingshu hurriedly stopped Wanyan Zhongjie's hand. What kind of joke was this? Zhao Min was one of his future wives. How could he let her scratch her face? Noticing his actions, Zhao Min let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, a faint smile appeared on her lips. Why did you save this woman again and again? Wanyan Zhongjie asked with a frown. It's such a waste to scratch such a beautiful woman's face. Song Qingshu deliberately used a rough tone as he spoke. You already have my aunt, such a beautiful wife. Why are you still thinking about other women? Wanyan Zhongjie said angrily. Fine, I don't care anymore. I'll leave the matter of getting out to you. Song Qingshu smiled. Actually, there's no need to do this. I know how to get out. You know how to get out? Wanyan Zhongjie asked curiously. Even Zhao Min turned to look at him. Song Qingshu nodded and began to search the surrounding walls of the room. Before long, he found a protrusion. He pulled it to the side, revealing a secret compartment. Inside was a bronze door knocker. Wanyan Zhongjie ran over excitedly and tried to pull it open. However, after trying a few times, it didn't budge. He became discouraged again. There's no door. What's the use of a door knocker? Zhao Min, who had been nervous all this time, finally let out a sigh of relief. Oomph! A blind cat bumped into a dead mouse. However, her eyes quickly widened. Song Qingshu pulled on the door knocker without hesitation. He knocked on it 7 or 8 times, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, sometimes long and sometimes short. As soon as the knocking stopped, there was a clicking sound. A beam of moonlight shone into the room, and a hidden door opened. How did you know my secret code? Zhao Min was completely confused. This was the first time she felt a chill down her spine. That's right. How did you know how to open the door? Wanyan Zhongjie asked curiously. Chapter 882. The reason why Song Qingshu knew the way out was because in the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, Zhao Min had trapped Zhang Wuji in a similar prison cell. In the end, Zhang Wuji had tickled her feet to force her to release him. Song Qingshu saw that the place he was in now was similar to the prison cell they had been in at that time, so he copied it. He didn't expect that he would actually find a way out, but how could he explain this reason? He could only pretend that he didn't know anything. Wanyan Zhongjie was worried that there was an ambush outside, so he crept out anxiously. However, he discovered that there was no one around. After looking around, he realized that they were in the back garden of a wealthy family. He excitedly ran to the door and called out to Song Qingshu, "Come out quickly. There's no one here. Take her with you." Take her with you? Song Qingshu was surprised. Of course, take her as a hostage just in case, Wanyan Zhongjie said. Oh, okay then. Song Qingshu was worried that the longer he stayed with Zhao Min, the more likely it was that she would see through his identity. However, she had seen that he and Wanyan Zhongjie both knew martial arts, so he couldn't just let her stay here. Don't touch me. Seeing that Song Qingshu was approaching, Zhao Min's face turned cold. Song Qingshu ignored her and carried her in his arms. So what if I touch you? I will kill you. Being hugged by a stranger, Zhao Min was both embarrassed and angry. It's a pity that your martial arts are too weak, so you can't kill me, Song Qingshu said with a smile. I will find someone to kill you, Zhao Min said angrily. Find who? The Song Qingshu that you just mentioned? Song Qingshu deliberately asked. Zhao Min directly turned her head to the side and ignored him. When Wanyan Zhongjie saw him carrying Zhao Min out, a strange look appeared in his eyes. I'll let you have it for now. Let's go. Then he used his lightness kung fu, and under the cover of the night, with a few leaps he flew over the courtyard wall. Song Qingshu carried Zhao Min and followed closely behind. Oh, this is Prince Su's side courtyard. Wanyan Zhongjie revealed a strange expression when he saw the surrounding terrain. How did you know? Song Qingshu looked around. This should be near the back door. There were no signs or signboards. My house is nearby. I've lived here for more than 10 years. Do you know? After saying that, Yin Zhongjie rolled his eyes. At that moment, heavy footsteps could be heard from afar. She hurriedly said, there are many high-ranking officials and nobles' mansions nearby, so the security is very tight. There are often soldiers patrolling. It's not convenient for you to carry such a big person around. Let's hide in my house first. Song Qingshu didn't want to cause trouble, so he nodded and said, okay. Wanyan Zhongjie led the way, and Song Qingshu followed closely behind with Zhao Min in his arms. They turned left and right, and soon entered a house through the back door. They entered an elegant attic. This is your boudoir? Song Qingshu asked, noticing the decorations inside. The layout was very girlish. Wanyan Zhongjie's face immediately turned red. You have a captive with you, and you can't let anyone know. Where else can I put you two apart from here? He said. In this era, a girl's bedroom could be an extremely private place. Other than family members, only a few female friends could enter. Even fathers rarely stepped in, let alone other men. The only man of the same age who could enter was probably her future husband. Although the Jin Kingdom was a grassland regime, it had become very Han in recent years. In this aspect, etiquette was not much different from that of the Southern Song dynasty. I see. Song Qing-shu had just nodded when he heard the sound of someone coming up the stairs. He couldn't help but ask, "Isn't this your boudoir? Why is there someone here so late at night?" "It should be my mother." Wanyan Zhongjie frowned, and his expression turned ugly. "Is it Pucha Eluho?" Song Qing-shu had heard news about her several times. She used to be the eldest sister of the Pucha family and the younger sister of the two brothers, Hudi and Hyut. She was also the first beauty of the Jin Kingdom before Songbai. Although Song Qing-shu was curious about this former first beauty of the Jin Kingdom, she was more curious about Wanyan Zhongjie's reaction. Why was he so cold when mentioning her mother? There seemed to be a trace of disgust. "You hide for a while." Wanyan Zhongjie pouted at her, indicating for her to find a place to hide. Song Qing-shu looked around and subconsciously wanted to hide on the bed. After all, if he pulled down the curtain, he wouldn't be able to see what was going on inside. However, Wanyan Zhongjie hurriedly waved his hand. Song Qing-shu thought about it and agreed. It was indeed inappropriate for a man to hide in a girl's bed. Hearing the footsteps getting closer, he hurriedly picked up Zhao Min and jumped up, hiding on a beam in the room. In order to prevent Zhao Min from making a sound, he sealed her mute acupoint, causing her to roll her eyes. As soon as the two of them hid, a beautiful woman pushed open the door and entered. She had watery eyes, rosy lips, perky breasts, and a voluptuous body. Any man who saw her would think of a bed. Even though Song Qing-shu was used to seeing beautiful women, he had to admit that this mature woman was extremely attractive. She was indeed worthy of being the first beauty of the Jin Kingdom. However, that was all. Song Qing-shu had enough women by his side. He was no longer the young man who would act on impulse whenever he saw a woman. The current him was only interested in two types of women. One was women that he truly liked, and the other was women that could help him in his career. Song Qing-shu suddenly frowned. He could smell the strong smell of alcohol from afar. Why did this woman drink so much? "Mother, you're drunk again." From Wanyan Zhongjie's words, it seemed that she was often in this state. "At your age, what would he know?" Alcohol. Alcohol is the best thing in the world. As the saying goes, once drunk, 1,000 grievances are resolved. The mature woman spoke intermittently as she walked towards the bed. Seeing this, Song Qing-shu secretly wiped away the sweat on his forehead. He blamed Wanyan Zhongjie for telling him not to hide on the bed. It turned out that he knew that his mother would lie on the bed when she was drunk. Resolve 1,000 grievances. Resolve 1,000 grievances. You're just trying to escape. Wanyan Zhongjie looked at his mother angrily. The mature woman laughed and tried to change the topic. "My good daughter, where did you go? I didn't see you for the whole night. I was worried that you'd been deceived by some stinky man." "Woo-woo," Song Qing-shu frowned. This woman had started crying. It seemed that she had been suppressed by too many things. Who knew how many things had happened to this mother and daughter pair over the years? On the other hand, Wanyan Zhongjie's expression was stiff. His voice was full of sarcasm. "On one hand, you're worried that something might happen to me. On the other hand, you're dead drunk. You really are a good mother." The mature woman laughed awkwardly. "Because I know that my good daughter is the smartest. You're the only one who can take advantage of others. No one can take advantage of you. So I had the maidservant keep an eye on you. When I saw that the light in your room was lit, I immediately came to see you. Since you've seen me, you can go back and rest," Wanyan Zhongjie coldly replied. "Mother is dizzy. Today, I'll sleep here." Before she could finish speaking, the sound of her snoring could be heard from the bed. Wanyan Zhongjie was both angry and anxious. He stood there stupefied. Seeing that Pucha Elahu had fallen asleep, Song Qing-shu jumped out of bed. Your mother's really special. If his own mother was like this, he definitely wouldn't want outsiders to see her. He had unintentionally exposed the awkwardness between mother and daughter and felt a bit embarrassed. "Do you think she's beautiful?" Wanyan Zhongjie suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu hadn't expected this question. He glanced at the mature woman on the bed. Even though she was dead drunk, she was still sleeping like a begonia. He subconsciously replied, "She's quite beautiful." Wanyan Zhongji nodded. He suddenly reached out and pressed on Zhao Min's sleeping acupuncture point. Song Qing-shu was astonished. "What are you doing?" Wanyan Zhongjia ignored him. He walked over to the bed and sat down. He reached out and caressed his mother's face, tidying up her messy hair. His fingers gradually moved downwards, slowly unbuttoning her collar, revealing her fair skin. Only then did he turn his head to look at Song Qing-shu. "Do you undo her?" "What?" Song Qing-shu was completely dumbfounded. He had never expected that the other party would throw out such an earth-shattering question. Think about it. In the middle of the night, he was invited to his mother's room by a beautiful girl he had only met a few times. Then, she tore open his mother's clothes and asked him if he wanted to do her. What kind of melodramatic and F***king development was this? Are you crazy? This was the only sentence that could express Song Qing-shu's current feelings. "I know what you're worried about." "Don't worry, there's nothing to worry about." Wanyan Zhongjia suddenly laughed hysterically. He pointed at the woman on the bed. "She's dead drunk right now. She won't remember what you did. Even if she remembers, it doesn't matter. She's a whore who can be a husband to anyone. How can you talk about your own mother like that?" Song Qing-shu frowned. "Because she's not fit to be my mother." Wanyan Zhongjia's voice was as cold as ice. "I don't need a woman who can be a husband to anyone to be my mother." A husband to anyone? Song Qing-shu was deep in thought. There were many rumors about Pucha Elihu in the capital, but most of them had no evidence. But if his daughter was like this, could those rumors be true? While he was deep in thought, Wanyan Zhongjia suddenly stood up. "Let's go. Accompany me to kill Wanyan Liang." "Big sister, your thoughts are jumping too far. Just now your mother." Seeing the hatred in Wanyan Zhongjia's eyes, Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He asked tentatively, "Did your mother become like this because of Wanyan Liang?" Chapter 883. When Emperor Taizong passed away, the current emperor ascended to the throne after many parties fought over it. However, he was still young at that time, and the power of the court was jointly managed by 3 ministers who helped him ascend to the throne. Wanyan Zhongjia suddenly spoke, recalling the events of the past in a particularly sad tone. "These 3 are my grandfather Wanyan Zongpan, the father of the king of Hailing, Wanyan Zonggan, and the king of Zhao, Wanyan Honglai." Wanyan Honglai? In this world, he is Yang Kang's biological father. Song Qing did not disturb Wanyan Zhongjia and continued to listen. In the beginning, it was still peaceful. The 3 of them managed the court together, and the Jin Kingdom's national strength quickly grew and became one of the strongest countries in the world. However, the 3 of them were all outstanding men, and deep down, they were not willing to share power with others. So it didn't take long for the 3 of them to start fighting each other for power. In the beginning, my grandfather had the advantage. After Emperor Taizong's death, he should have inherited the throne. However, under the checks and balances of various parties, he had no choice but to return the throne to the descendants of Emperor Taizong. However, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse, and his power was the strongest among the 3 ministers. At that time, the heir of the king of Zhao, Wanyan Kong, was killed in the Central Plains. The king of Zhao was in a daze, and my grandfather took the opportunity to cut off the king's wings and remove him from the center of power. In the end, the king of Zhao died of depression. Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Listening to her now, her grandfather was clearly not a good person. Why did she not have the slightest intention of respecting him? Wanyan Zhongjia continued. After the king of Zhao was pushed away, my grandfather's power could be said to be overwhelming. Even the other minister, Wanyan Zonggan, was respectful to him and followed his lead. Gradually, my grandfather let down his guard, and Wanyan Zonggan revealed his fangs. By the time my grandfather reacted, it was already too late. In the end, Wanyan Zonggan framed my grandfather for treason and executed him. My father was also implicated and died in prison. My condolences. Seeing her sad expression, Song Qing did not know how to comfort her and could only think of a way to divert her attention. But I don't understand. Your grandfather already controlled the court. How did Wanyan Zongan turn the tables so easily? Did you forget what I mentioned at the beginning about Grandpa's identity? Wanyan Zhongjia looked in the direction of the imperial palace with a trace of hatred on his face. My grandfather almost succeeded the throne, and Wanyan she had long regarded him as a thorn in his side. Wanyan Zongan had grasped his mentality, and that was how he was able to kill my grandfather. When mentioning the emperor of the Jin kingdom, Wanyan Zongan directly called him by his name, without the slightest hint of respect. Song Qing sighed. Since ancient times, when it comes to the fight for the throne, even the weakest person will become ruthless. Wanyan Zhongjia looked at him in surprise. It seems like you're not a loyal and patriotic person. Song Qing smiled bitterly. To put it nicely, he was called the Golden Snake King, but to put it bluntly, he was just a rebel leader. Moreover, he came from a later generation, and if he were to speak out his ideas, he would be regarded as a traitor by all the rulers of the world. He said, "Continue. What happened next?" After grandfather and father's accident, we lost our protective umbrella. Because my mother's beauty spread far and wide, many people started to have designs on her. However, her identity was a sensitive one, so no one dared to make a move on her. Until Wanyan Zhongjia's voice suddenly became bone-chilling. Until one day, that dog, Wanyan Liang, broke into the mansion drunk and did to my mother. Song Qing gently stroked her hair and comforted her. "All right, I understand. You don't have to say it." Wanyan Zhongjia looked at him gratefully. He skipped over this part and continued. At that time, his father, Wanyan Zongan, held great power in the court. Even though he had done such a thing, no one dared to punish him. My mother went everywhere to ask for help, but no one in the capital was willing to help. Instead, there were rumors that my mother was fickle and that after her husband died, she seduced another man. In despair, my mother abandoned herself to despair. The gentle and virtuous mother disappeared and was replaced by a seductive woman. She walked among many men and became a slut in everyone's eyes. At this point, her body trembled uncontrollably. Song Qing shook his head. Your mother had no other choice. Your grandfather and father were dead, and you were all criminals who could be demoted to slaves at any time. As a woman, she could only use her beauty to her advantage. If she didn't do this, how could she maintain this family and protect you? I don't need her protection. Wanyan Zhongjia immediately exploded. I would rather she take me with her to accompany father in death than do such a thing. At the end of the day, she was afraid of death and chose to drag out an ignoble existence. Song Qing sighed when he saw the agitated girl in front of him. The greatest courage in this world is not to die heroically for a certain ideal, but to live humbly for a certain ideal. Living is much harder than dying. Wanyan Zhongjia was stunned. What do you mean? Song Qing looked at the beautiful woman sleeping soundly on the bed and said in a low voice, "Although I don't know exactly what your mother was thinking, I can roughly guess what she was thinking. According to what you said just now, the court should be controlled by Wanyan Zongan and his godson. But why is it that Wanyan Zongan is nowhere to be seen and Wanyan Liang is only ranked 4th in the court? Above him are Wanyan Zongxian, left Prime Minister Zongmin, and right Prime Minister Zongben. Wanyan Zongan seemed to have contracted some kind of illness and decided to retire. Not long after, he died, and the other members of the imperial family took the opportunity to take over." Wanyan Zhongjia's voice suddenly trembled. "You're saying that all of this was done by my mother?" "No, that's impossible. All these years, your mother has money and power, wandering around with various men. Not long after Wanyan Zongan retired, his power was divided among the other factions. If you say that all of this has nothing to do with her, I don't believe you." Although Song Qing didn't know the details, he had seen so many court dramas in his previous life. After coming to this world, he had even become an emperor. He combined theory with reality and looked at problems from a perspective that a young woman couldn't compare to. I didn't expect that there would still be someone in this world who can understand me and understand me. A faint voice suddenly came from his side. Wanyan Zhongjia's body stiffened, and he turned his head in disbelief. His mother, who had been lying on the bed a moment ago, was now sitting up. Her eyes were clear, and she didn't look drunk at all. Chapter 884. Pucha Elihu looked at him deeply. Even my own daughter doesn't understand me, and even hates me. I didn't expect an outsider like you to be able to guess my thoughts so well. I didn't understand why goodbye fell for you in the past, but now I do. To be able to marry a man like you is a woman's greatest happiness. Song Qingshu blushed at her praise and smiled embarrassedly. You flatter me, madam. Mother, he's not tranquil. Wanyan Zhongjia still hadn't come back to his senses, but he still subconsciously corrected his mother's words. Hm? Pucha Elihu looked surprised. Only then did Wanyan Zhongjia roughly explain how he discovered Tang Quobian's identity. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Little girl, this is where you're wrong. Why do you think I'm an imposter? Just because I know martial arts? If I remember correctly, in everyone's impression, Miss Chung doesn't know martial arts, right? Now that you have a consummate skill, can I suspect that you're also a fake? Wanyan Zhongjia was speechless. You're twisting words and forcing logic. You admitted it before. Did I admit it? Song Qingshu looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Wanyan Zhongjia was stunned. He thought back carefully and realized that she really hadn't admitted she was an imposter. She'd just been acting alone. Pucha Elihu reached out and pressed down on his daughter. Whether you're the real Tang Quobian or not, it doesn't matter to us. The only thing we care about is, are you an enemy? A friend? Whether I'm a friend or an enemy, none of you can influence my choice. What does madam think? Song Qingshu looked at the mature and beautiful woman in front of him and sighed. No wonder she could walk among so many men. She did have the capital. Young master is right. Pucha Elihu smiled. For what you just said, it's clear that you don't have any enmity towards us. I was overthinking. Madam has been dancing on a tightrope for so many years. It's better to be careful, Song Qingshu replied. Dancing on a tightrope? Young noble's description is quite apartment. Pucha's Elihu covered his mouth and laughed. Wanyan Zhongjia frowned. Because of the shadow of the past few years, he subconsciously didn't like his mother teasing other men. Seeing this, he immediately interrupted. Mother, is what he just said true? Pucha's smile disappeared and he sighed. When your father was in trouble, I wanted to go with him, but you were still young. If I had gone, I'm afraid you wouldn't have survived. Even if you did, your life would be miserable. At first, I was still a little hesitant until Wanyan Liang broke into the mansion. After that, I finally thought it through. I want revenge. Not only do I want to avenge your father and grandfather, but I also want to avenge myself. That's why I chose to survive. All these years, I've been humiliated and looked down upon by my own daughter. I've wavered, but all these years of sacrifice haven't been in vain. I've finally succeeded in killing that old bastard Wanyan Zhonggan. Wait, you killed Wanyan Zhonggan? Didn't he get sick and return to his hometown? Wanyan Zhongjia asked curiously. Do you think that old bastard would give up his power so easily? Pucha's father hesitated, but in the end, he shook his head. Don't ask about the process. You won't want to hear it. Wanyan Zhongjia was stunned at first, but he quickly reacted. His nose turned sour, and he threw himself into his mother's arms. Mother, I'm sorry. I've misunderstood you all these years. Seeing the mother and daughter crying together, Song Qingshu didn't want to disturb them. He went to Zhao Min's side and looked at her sleeping face. After a moment of absent-mindedness, he felt a headache coming on. What to do with her would be the real problem. He definitely couldn't let her go, but he also didn't dare to keep her here. Wanyan Zhongjia looked innocent on the outside, but she was vicious and merciless. She might just turn around and kill Zhao Min to silence her. Wanyan Zhongjia cried for a while before suddenly raising his head. Mother, you've already killed Wanyan Zhonggan. If I kill Wanyan Liang, I'll be able to avenge father and grandfather. Don't. Pucha's father hurriedly pulled his daughter back. Wanyan Liang has many experts by his side. You won't be able to kill him. I can't do it alone. There's still him. Wanyan Zhongjie pointed at Song Qing-shu. He promised me to help me kill Wanyan Liang. What did I promise you? Song Qing-shu's face was gloomy. This girl is really clinging to me. If you don't promise me, I'll tell everyone that you impersonated Tang Quobian. Song Qing-shu was about to say something, but Wanyan Zhongjie quickly added, don't try to fool me with what you just said. Let's see if the people in the capital will believe you. I'm afraid of you. Young Mississippi, Song Qing-shu felt a headache coming on. I'll help you kill Wanyan Liang, but not now. When will that be? Wanyan Zhongjie asked. That's none of your business. I'm in the middle of a plan to deal with Wanyan Liang. Don't ruin my plans, Song Qing-shu replied. I don't believe you. Wanyan Zhongjie thought to himself, I'm not that easy to fool. There's no way you can stall me with a delaying tactic. Song Qing-shu's expression darkened. Pucha's father hurriedly pulled his daughter back. All right, mother believes that he won't lie to us. But Wanyan Liang has given him his favorite carriage time and time again. I don't believe that he'll kill Wanyan Liang. Wanyan Zhongjie was also anxious. He hurriedly told his mother about how he had mistakenly hit the side carriage when he tried to assassinate Wanyan Liang. This time, even Pucha's mother looked suspicious. Song Qing-shu's mouth twitched in disdain. He thought to himself, so what if he gave me a carriage? Wanyan Liang even gave me his consort to ride. Noticing their suspicious gazes, Song Qing-shu had an idea. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see someone. Who? The two girls asked in unison. Goodbye. Song Qing-shu replied in a deep voice. Actually, he didn't want to explain things to the two girls. He was just worried that if they worked together while they were suspicious of each other, it might cause some unnecessary trouble. Rather than that, it would be better to work together honestly. With his martial arts, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill Wanyan Liang. The difficult part was what to do after he killed Wanyan Liang. Coincidentally, he had obtained an opportunity to enter the inner circle of the Jin Kingdom. It would be a pity to waste it. When he found out that Wanyan Liang wanted to usurp the throne, he came up with a plan. First, he would let Wanyan Liang get rid of the other core members of the Jin Kingdom. When Wanyan Liang was ready to become the emperor, he would replace him. This way, not only would he be able to get rid of Wanyan Liang, but he would also be able to gain the power of the Jin Kingdom. However, replacing Kanshi was not an easy task. Previously, he succeeded because of various coincidences. It could be said that he had taken a huge risk. Moreover, because everything happened in a hurry, he didn't have the time to train his trusted subordinates. As a result, when he became the emperor of the Qin Kingdom, his control over the entire Qin Kingdom was extremely limited, even with the help of a genius like Dongfang Muxue. If he had enough trusted subordinates to help him control the entire Qin Kingdom, the Qin Kingdom would not have sent an army to encircle and annihilate the Golden Snake Battalion. Sending an army to encircle and annihilate the Golden Snake Battalion was the consensus of the Qin Kingdom's upper echelons. Even as the emperor, he couldn't stop it. If he did, it would easily arouse suspicion. Later, with the help of Dongfang Muxue and the help of a steady stream of intelligence, he was able to achieve a miracle. Then, he took the opportunity to purge a large number of people from the upper echelons of the Qin Kingdom. Only then was the Qin Kingdom truly under his control. This time in the Jin Kingdom, he didn't want history to repeat itself. Last time, he acted rashly because he had no other choice. This time, he had enough time, of course, he had to be fully prepared. After turning Zhongjie and his daughter into his allies, he already had two of the three great families of the Jin Kingdom, the Pucha family and the Tranquil family. Through Wanyan Zhongjie, he had established a relationship with Taizong. Through Yonghua, he had established a relationship with the king of Zhao. In addition, Empress Peiman was also on his side. Once the final plan was completed, his control over the Jin Kingdom would be much greater than when he hastily impersonated Kangxi and became the emperor in name only. Song Qing-shu carried Zhao Min and brought Wanyan Zhongjie and his daughter back to the Tranquil mansion. When Gubai saw that he had brought so many people back, she couldn't help but be shocked. Song, husband, what's going on? Song Qing-shu placed Zhao Min on the bed and pulled the blanket over her. Let's not talk about this for now. You should know them, right? Gobai looked at the mother and daughter and nodded awkwardly. Wanyan Zhongjia was still all right. Occasionally, he would come to visit and call her Annie very affectionately. On the other hand, Pucha Elihu and Gobai didn't have much of a relationship. They only knew each other. In addition, Pucha Elihu's actions over the years had caused Gobai, who had always been gentle and dignified, to look down on her. After settling Zhao Min down, Song Qingshu told Gobai what had happened that day. When she heard that the mother and daughter had always wanted to take revenge on Wanyan Liang and his son, and especially when she heard that Pucha Elihu had endured all these years, Gobai immediately burst into tears. Because of what happened to Tang Quobian, Gobai suddenly felt that they had a common enemy. When she looked at the mother and daughter again, she suddenly felt much closer. You didn't call us here just to tell Annie about us, did you? Wanyan Zhongjia was a little dissatisfied. If more people knew about this, the mother and daughter would be in more danger. Moreover, Song Qingshu had said that he had a way to make them believe that he was dealing with Wanyan Liang. But until now, she still didn't know if he was trustworthy. Of course not. Haven't you always been curious about who I am? Song Qingshu pulled at his beard and took off his mask, revealing his true face. Chapter 885. Wanyan Zhongjia and Pucha Elihu subconsciously rubbed their eyes when they saw the man in front of them transform from a bearded man into a handsome young man. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Song Qingshu sighed at Wanyan Zhongjia. You guessed correctly. I'm not Tang Quobian. The real Tang Quobian was killed by Wanyan Liang. He then told them about how Wanyan Liang had used a borrowed knife to kill Tang Quobian in Kaifeng City, and how he had sent an assassin to assassinate Tang Quobian. Gobai was already sobbing, and Pucha Elihu hurriedly went up to her and comforted her. Now you'll believe that I'm really going to deal with Wanyan Liang, right? Song Qingshu said. Wanyan Zhongjia finally came back to his senses. Then who are you? Are sigma greater than over equal to sigma greater than over equal to sigma greater than over equal to greater than over equal to plus slash? You've already heard my name. Song Qingshu glanced at Zhao Min, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Wanyan Zhongjia was puzzled at first when he noticed his gaze, but he quickly reacted. You're the Golden Snake King, Song Qingshu. This time, even Pucha Elihu looked at him in shock. After all, the Golden Snake King was an unforgivable devil in the eyes of the Qing and Jin kingdoms. Song Qingshu nodded. That's right, it's me. Wanyan Zhongjia's face was full of excitement as he looked him up and down. It's you. No wonder you're so capable. Hurry up and tell me, how did you summon the wind and rain? Are you a god or a monster? Faced with her questions, Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. Of course I'm human, but you don't look like one. Wanyan Zhongjia reached out and poked in the chest. Song Qingshu, #%yen. Zhongjia, don't mess around. Beside her, Pucha Elihu couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly stopped his daughter. Of course, a large part of it was because of the Jin kingdom's demonization of him that she was still a little afraid of Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu finally opened his mouth and said, Okay, now you know what's going on. From now on, we can communicate with each other. Also, Zhongjia, for the time being, don't try to assassinate Wanyan Liang. Firstly, it's too dangerous. Secondly, it would alert the enemy and ruin my plan. Wanyan Zhongjia frowned. I can temporarily stop assassinating him, but you have to tell me what your plan is. No, Song Qingshu flatly refused. You'll know when the time comes. Wanyan Zhongjia still wanted to argue, but Pucha Elihu tugged at her and secretly shook his head. She could only pout angrily. It's getting late, Song Qingshu continued. You should take advantage of the darkness to go back. Otherwise, if Wanyan Liang sees you leaving during the day, he'll be suspicious. Fine, I'll go. Although he knew that what he said made sense, Wanyan Zhongjia was still extremely unhappy. Because of her beauty, she was the center of attention wherever she went. If she was a guest in a man's house, they would be more than happy to have her stay the night. Unlike Song Qingshu, who was in such a hurry to chase her away, he was really unromantic. Pucha Elaho felt the same way. However, after so many years of living, she had long since become calm and collected. She was only slightly startled before she calmed down. Wait! Hearing Song Qing-shu call out to her, Wanyan Zhongjie's lips curled into a smile. What, you don't want me to go? You just offended me. I'm not that easy to coax. Song Qing-shu's face darkened. You're thinking too much. Eat this. He extended his hand in front of the two women and opened it to reveal 2 pills, one red and one yellow. What are these? Wanyan Zhongjie's expression changed. She vigilantly stood in front of her mother. One is called the 3-corpse brain pill, and the other is the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. Song Qing-shu paused. You're not from the martial world, so perhaps you haven't heard of them. I can explain them to you. The 3-corpse brain pill is a medicine used by the Sun-Moon sex hierarch to control his subordinates. There are 3 types of corpse insects in the pill. Nothing unusual happens after taking it, but during the Duanyang festival every year, if you don't take the antidote in time, the corpse insects will break free. Once they enter the brain, the person who takes the pill will act like a demon. They'll even bite and eat their parents and wives. The leopard embryo tendon altering pill is a miraculous medicine from the Eastern Sea divine dragon sect. It's made from leopard embryos, deer embryos, human placenta, for seal kidneys, and other rare and nutritious medicinal ingredients. It can strengthen the body for a year, but if the antidote isn't taken at the end of the year, the violent poison will flare up. There was once a fat man and a thin man who didn't take the antidote in time. The fat man was originally short and fat, but within 3 months, his body suddenly grew 3 feet longer and his skin was drenched in blood. The fat man was originally very tall, but he suddenly became shorter. He was originally very thin, but he became unbearably swollen, turning into a big fat man. Before Song Qing-shu could finish, Wanyan Zhongjie shouted, What kind of insidious and disgusting medicine is this? You're not going to make us take it, are you? That's right. To prevent you from leaking the news, Song Qing-shu replied indifferently. He glanced at the nearby goodbye. It's fine if it's just me, but this time it's also related to the goodbye and many others. If you betray us, many innocent people will die. Our hatred for Wanyan Liang runs as deep as the sea. Do you think we'll betray you? Wanyan Zhongjie trembled in anger. People will always change. What I need to do is to reduce all the dangers to the lowest possible level. Song Qing-shu secretly sighed in his heart. Not long ago, he was also a sunny, optimistic, and virtuous young man. But after all these years, his heart had slowly become cold. In the past, he would definitely have chosen to believe the mother and daughter. But now, to him, a reasonable system and means were more reliable than human nature. Impossible. We will never take this medicine. Wanyan Zhongjie's face was as calm as still water. He quietly took out a short sword from his sleeve. Song Qing-shu chuckled. Wanyan Zhongjie felt his vision blur, and then he was shocked to find that both his and his mother's acupuncture points had been sealed. Right now, your only choice is to decide which medicine to take. The 3-corpse brain divine pill or the leopard embryo tendon change pill. Song Qing-shu walked in front of them with the 2 kinds of medicine. You can rest assured that after this matter is over, I will give you the antidote. It won't harm you at all. Wanyan Zhongjie gritted his teeth. If we take the medicine, won't we have to listen to you for a while? Oh, you can think of it that way. This was another reason why Song Qing-shu had chosen to give them the medicine. After all, their hatred for Wanyan Liang was too deep. If they couldn't control themselves and did something rash, the whole plan would fail. That would be really depressing. That's even worse. Wanyan Zhongjie's small face suddenly turned bright red. We are under the control of your drug. If you covet our mother and daughter, how are we going to resist you? Song Qing-shu almost fell over. Oh, although your suggestion is very attractive, I'm not that despicable. Didn't you just say that people's hearts can change? Wanyan Zhongjie mocked. Song Qing-shu was momentarily speechless. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. Don't talk nonsense. If you don't choose, I'll give it to you. Wanyan Zhongjie pursed his lips. He knew that he was now a fish on the chopping block. He could only snort. I choose the 3-corpse brain pill. Girls still loved to look beautiful. Even though the corpse bugs were equally scary, Wanyan Zhongjie felt that it was better to just die than to become a short, fat, and ugly woman. Pucha Elihu's face was deathly pale. He made the same choice as his daughter. After feeding them the medicine, Song Qing-shu unsealed their acupoints. It's not safe in Daxing Prefecture right now. Do you want me to send you back? Forget it. I don't want to be fed any more medicine by you. Wanyan Zhongjie's face was cold. Pucha Elihu also sighed. I thought that young master was a soulmate of Gao Shan and Lu Shui. Who knew that young master was as scary as the rumors say? I was also fooled by his delicate appearance. He's a complete demon. Wanyan Zhongjie snorted. He supported his mother and walked out without looking back. After the two women left, Song Qing-shu looked at Goodbye and sighed. Do you also think that I've gone too far? You're not familiar with them, so there's nothing wrong with being careful. However, I'm curious. Why didn't you force me to take this medicine? Goodbye stared at him with wide, sparkling eyes. Song Qing-shu was stunned. I don't know why, but I've never thought of it that way. Goodbye pursed her lips and smiled. All right. Let's not talk about this. Where did you find such a beautiful girl? Is she your lover? Song Qing-shu shook his head. My relationship with her is very strange. We're enemies and friends at the same time. For some reason, Goodbye secretly sighed in relief when she heard his answer. Then what do you plan to do with her? Her identity is very sensitive. We can't let her come into contact with the outside world for a while. We'll lock her up for a while. Song Qing-shu hesitated for a moment before saying, Is there a secret room in the Fu? Yes. Goodbye's face suddenly turned red. Did you forget that time when you exchanged with Wanyan Liang? The secret room in my room? Hearing her mention that night, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Doesn't Wang Fei taste good? Goodbye hadn't thought that she would suddenly say something so out of line. Song Qing-shu wrapped his arm around her slender and soft waist. Although she tastes good, she can't compare to you. Seeing the other's face come closer, Goodbye's face turned even redder. She murmured, I feel that I'm letting Wugu La down. If he really blames you, then let him come to me. Song Qing-shu liked her shyness before she spoke and her attitude of wanting to reject him. With a groan, Goodbye was lifted up by Song Qing-shu. Seeing him carry her to the bed, Goodbye hurriedly said, Don't, there's someone else on the bed. Chapter 886. Within Prince Su's residence, Wanyan Yongzheng looked angrily at his subordinates kneeling on the ground. What the hell are you doing? A living person disappeared into thin air just like that, and you didn't even notice? Your Highness, Ms. Zhao likes peace and quiet. She usually doesn't let us near her courtyard, so we reacted a bit slower. The subordinate braced himself and said, You still dare to quibble? Wanyan Yongzheng swept the tea set on the table to the ground. Today, those people were in charge of Miss Zhao's safety. Tell them to come see me. Your Highness, not long ago, that they were all killed by a mysterious person. The subordinate was drenched in cold sweat as he replied. What? Wanyan Yongzheng suddenly stood up, his heart in turmoil. Just who is targeting me? Is it the Emperor, the Changsheng Prince, or the Hailing Prince? At this time, in the former Grand Preceptor's residence, Pucha Elihu was looking worriedly at the door. Seeing that his daughter had finally returned, he almost collapsed. On the way back, you said that you had something to do and left with a gloomy expression. I was worried that you would run back to settle the score with Song Qing-shu. My good daughter, listen to your mother. That demon is vicious and merciless. We can't afford to offend him. He's vicious and merciless. Wanyan Zhongjie couldn't help but roll his eyes. If he really was vicious and merciless, then I wouldn't have to clean up his mess. Pucha Elihu's face turned red. What nonsense is a girl spouting? What do you mean clean up my mess? That's so unpleasant to hear. Wanyan Zhongjie began to explain. Today, he and I were captured by Prince Su's people and brought to Miss Zhao's courtyard. If we didn't silence them and Prince Su discovered that she was missing, he would definitely come to investigate us. I didn't want to bring trouble upon myself, so I killed all the people who came to capture me during the day. I've always treated him as my idol, but he's such a wishy-washy person. The more Wanyan Zhongjie spoke, the angrier he became. Pucha Elihu frowned. Why are you speaking up for him? Don't you mind that he forced us to take poison? She shuddered at the thought of the 3 cadaveric insects hiding in her body, even if they were in a dormant state. What's there to worry about? In any case, the poison won't take effect within a year. When the time comes, he'll give us the antidote. If I were him, I'd probably be 10 times more ruthless, Wanyan Zhongjie replied. Then why were you so angry before? Seeing his daughter in high spirits, Pucha Elihu was dumbfounded. I did it for him to see. If we happily took his medicine, he might find other ways to deal with us. Wanyan Zhongjie snorted proudly. Besides, I deliberately acted like that. He will definitely feel guilty and will unknowingly compensate us. You really believe that he will give us the antidote? After all these years of darkness, it could be said that Pucha Elihu would never trust any man again. Don't worry. He looks like a ruthless and ambitious person, but he's actually an extremely soft-hearted person. After carefully interacting with the various hedonistic sons of the capital these past few years, Wanyan Zhongjie had long since developed the ability to see through men's hearts. When she thought of the sincere smile on Goodbye's face when she saw him, she was even more certain. When Zhao Min woke up, she found herself lying on a bed. Shocked, she hurriedly checked her clothes. Seeing that they were intact, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Only then did she have the opportunity to look around. She discovered that she was probably in a secret underground room. With a cursory glance, she found a possible exit. Her gaze followed the sloping stairs, thinking to herself, I wonder where it leads to. You're awake? A man's voice suddenly came from beside her, causing Zhao Min to jump in fright. She turned around and saw a man sitting in the shadows. The dim light shone on his face, making him look especially frightening. Tranquil, it's you. Zhao Min was both shocked and angry. That's right, it's me. Song Qingshu got up and walked over to the bedside. Looking at the woman on the bed, he said, Miss Zhao, you didn't expect the tables to turn so quickly, did you? Zhao Min coldly snorted and ignored him. Instead, she asked, Is this the Grand Preceptor's residence or the Prince Consort's residence? She remembered that before she fainted, he, in Wanyan Zhongjie, had brought her back to the Grand Preceptor's residence. However, there was no sign of that damn girl. She was most likely in the Prince Consort's residence. It doesn't matter if I tell you. You're in the Prince Consort's residence right now. Song Qingshu pointed up. Our bedroom is up there. By this time, Zhao Min had already calmed down. Tell me, how long do you plan on keeping me locked up? Song Qingshu smiled. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? If you wanted to kill me, you would have done so long ago. Since you haven't, it means that I'm more valuable to you alive than dead, replied Zhao Min calmly. Miss, you're truly a heroine. Even in this situation, you're still able to remain calm. Song Qingshu praised her from the bottom of his heart. How long do you plan on keeping me locked up? Zhao Min ignored him and repeated her question. Or what do I have to do for you to let me go? Miss, you don't need to worry. I won't harm you. However, I haven't thought of what to do with you yet. I'll let you know when I've thought about it. Song Qingshu was telling the truth. Zhao Min was a hot potato. He couldn't let her go. He knew that Tang Quobian and Wanyan Zhongjie knew martial arts. If she were to go out, it would definitely ruin things. However, he couldn't kill her. Given their private relationship, he couldn't bear to do so. After thinking about it, he could only keep her locked up here for the time being. Hearing his answer, Zhao Min seemed to be deep in thought. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked, According to the information I received, Tang Quobian shouldn't be as skilled in martial arts as you are. Who are you? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. However, having experienced Wanyan Zhongjie's interrogation, his expression was much more normal this time. Everyone has a little secret. I've learned a lot of martial arts. Why would I want to tell everyone about it? Is that so? Zhao Min looked at him suspiciously. Song Qingshu stood up and said, Miss Zhao, you can stay here for the time being. I won't disturb your rest any longer. Zhao Min shook her head. I don't have the temperament to be locked up. Rather than being locked up like this, I'd rather kill myself. As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and chopped down on the top of her head. Song Qingshu was shocked. He didn't expect her to kill herself so easily. Although he felt that it was most likely a trap, he couldn't take the risk. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of her, grabbing her wrist. The corners of Zhao Min's lips curled up slightly. The next moment, the quilt covering her suddenly rose. Taking advantage of the fact that Song Qingshu's vision was blocked, she struck several major acupoints on his chest through the quilt. Miss Zhao, have you forgotten so quickly that you can't restrain me by striking acupoints? A voice sounded from behind the quilt. Zhao Min's smile immediately froze. Chapter 887. Zhao Min shrank back in fear. She was both embarrassed and angry. If you dare to be rude to me, I'll tear you into pieces. Are you trying to scare me? Song Qing looked at her calmly. Why wouldn't I dare? Miss Zhao, you have to realize that you're my prisoner now. I can do whatever I want to you, and you have no right to resist. After the initial panic, Zhao Min quickly calmed down. Tang Quobian, do you know who I am? Oh, don't tell me that you're a fairy from heaven who has come down to the human world to understand the situation of the people. Song Qing knew who she was, but Tang Quobian shouldn't know. So he took the opportunity to play dumb. I'm Commandery Princess Xiaomin of the Ruyong Prince's Mansion of Mongolia. If you dare to offend me, even your Jin Kingdom won't be able to withstand the anger of the great Mongolian Empire, let alone a prince consort like you. If the Mongolian army comes and demands for you, what do you think will happen to you? Oh, by the way, your beautiful wife will be humiliated 10 times or even 100 times more. Is that what you want to see? Zhao Min changed the topic and said, of course, if you let me go, I can pretend that this never happened. I can also use all kinds of resources to help you enter the core power of the Jin Kingdom's imperial court. At that time, it's not impossible for Xiangling to marry you. What do you think? I'm so scared. Song Qing made the classic expression he had seen on TV in his previous life. He quickly put away his smile and said, but what you said is based on the premise that the Mongolians know that you're in my hands. Unfortunately, no one knows that you're here now. Zhao Min snorted. If you don't want people to know, then don't do it. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall. With our intelligence network, we'll find out the truth sooner or later. Song Qing shook his head. Although what you said makes sense, it's still not enough to convince me. Think about other reasons, or else I'll start taking off your clothes. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together with a sinister smile. Even Song Qing admired himself. If he were to put his current expression on the screen in his previous life and play the role of a villain, it might become a childhood trauma for many people. Nanny Rong from My Fair Princess, Feng Yuanzheng from Don't Talk to Strangers, In Jeeping from The Return of the Condor Heroes. Everyone gave him a thumbs up. Zhao Min finally panicked. Encountering such an impervious person, she found that her usual intelligence was useless. Don't come over. Scream as much as you want. Even if you scream until your throat breaks, no one will come to save you. Song Qing smiled even more strangely. He stretched out his hand and pulled. With a crisp sound of cloth tearing, more than half of Zhao Min's coat was instantly torn. Zhao Min cried out in surprise. She hurriedly put her hands in front of her chest to block the sudden flash of light. You bastard! Thank you for the compliment. Song Qing picked up the torn clothes and sniffed it, revealing an intoxicated expression. Smells good. At the same time, he felt a chill in his heart. He was clearly just trying to scare her. Why did it feel like he was getting more and more into the role? Shameless. Zhao Min was so angry that her whole body was trembling. If you dare to touch me, my man will not let you go. Oh, Song Qing stopped what he was doing and asked with great interest, who is your man? The first person that appeared in Zhao Min's mind was Zhang Wuji. After all, the two of them had an unforgettable love. However, now that Zhang Wuji's soul had become that old monster, Wisdom King, Zhao Min subconsciously did not want to mention him. Then, Another name suddenly appeared in her mind. She immediately blurted out, Golden Snake King Song Qing. Song Qing was stunned. He did not expect to hear his own name. Noticing his reaction, the quick-witted Zhao Min knew there was a chance. She hurriedly added oil to the fire. My man has the power of ghosts and gods. He knows the art of summoning the wind and the rain. One man and one horse, he defeated the entire Manchurian army. He is also a peerless master. He defeated all the heroes in the world at the Golden Snake meeting. He once broke into the Forbidden City alone and killed many people. Kangxi was terrified. You ask yourself, is the prince consort's mansion more dangerous than the Forbidden City of the Manchurian Qing? Song Qing could not help but touch his nose. This series of exaggerated words sounded so shameful. However, it seemed to feel quite good. He had originally only intended to scare him. Seeing this, he took advantage of the momentum and stopped what he was doing. He said seriously, Oh, it turns out that you are the Golden Snake King's woman. The Golden Snake King is wise and valiant. His martial arts are matchless, and his magical power is boundless. He enjoys immortal happiness and longevity. How could I dare to offend his woman? I hope Miss Zhao will forgive me for my offense. Zhao Min was dumbfounded. The Mongolian Empire had destroyed countless countries and had hundreds of masters and elite soldiers. How could he be less influential than Song Qing? Ahem. Noticing Zhao Min's sluggish expression, Song Qing knew that he had acted a bit too exaggeratedly just now. He hurriedly changed the topic. If Miss Zhao is really young Master Song's woman, then of course I wouldn't dare to offend you. However, even though young Master Song is handsome, elegant, and loved by everyone who sees him, and could even be said to have charmed thousands of girls, I still have to investigate whether Miss is his woman or not. If I find out that Miss is indeed young Master Song's woman, then I will dismount from my horse and send Miss back in a sedan. Oh no, I will send Miss back in a carriage and apologize to Mississippi. But before that, I hope that Miss will stay here and not make things difficult for me. Zhao Min listened to him in a daze. She nodded subconsciously and watched him leave. Song Qing secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. It was not easy for him. He had to make her behave, but at the same time, he could not let her lose hope and harm herself. After thinking for a long time, he could only come up with such a bad idea. At this moment, Zhao Min's mind was in a mess. Song Qing is so smart. If he knows that someone is investigating my relationship with him, he will definitely come to his senses. He will definitely play along with my words and come to save me secretly. But it is a bit embarrassing to let him know that I have repeatedly pretended to be his woman. Wait, Tranquil is a concubine of the Jin Kingdom. Why would he be so afraid of Song Qing, who has nothing to do with him, and have a way to investigate our relationship? Zhao Min finally came to her senses. She looked back and thought about everything that had happened just now. Her expression suddenly became interesting. She could not help but bite her lips and snort. Song Qing, you bastard. Hearing Song Qing coming out of the secret chamber, she got up in a daze. The quilt slipped quietly, revealing half of her snow-white shoulder. Have you settled, Miss Zhao? Yes. Song Qing nodded. Recalling the flustered expression on Zhao Min's face when her clothes were torn, he felt a fire rising in his lower abdomen. He quickly crawled under the quilt, causing Goodbye to cry out in surprise. Chapter 888. Ever since the incident at the laundry yard, the entire Daxing prefecture had become much more somber. Every now and then, there would be guards patrolling the streets. In the following days, the court was also very noisy. After a series of officials were promoted and demoted, Song Qing decided to enter the palace to talk to Empress Peiman. The guards in the palace were even more exaggerated. Even with Song Qingshu's lightness skill, he found it difficult to sneak in. In the end, he could only run to the hall of Taihe with the appearance of Xingguo and ask to see Empress Peiman. At this time, the eunuchs and palace maids in the hall of Taihe were silent. It turned out that Empress Peiman was furious. However, when she heard that Xingguo asked to see her, the anger on her face immediately disappeared. She waved at the people in the hall and said, "Quickly let him in. You all can leave first. Is there no need for you to serve here?" "Yes." The group of eunuchs and palace maids felt relieved and left with their heads lowered. This Xioxingwo is really favored by Her Majesty. When Her Majesty heard that he was here, her face bloomed with smiles. "That's right. I don't know what's so good about that little eunuch. Do you think he's Her Majesty's gigolo?" Silence. "Do you want to die? How dare you say such things?" As he passed by these eunuchs and palace maids, Song Qing-shu could vaguely hear their private discussions. He couldn't help but laugh. They were right. In a sense, he really was Empress Pei-man's gigolo. As soon as he entered the hall of Taihe, Empress Pei-man came over with a wisp of fragrant wind. "Young master, you finally come to see me?" Looking at the mature and beautiful woman in front of him, Song Qing-shu secretly sighed. The two of them were only exchanging interests and taking what they needed. There was far from any feelings. However, as the Empress, her noble status still made him feel a sense of achievement in conquering her. Song Qing-shu laughed. He took off his mask with one hand and put his other hand around Pei-man's plump and soft waist. He went straight to the seat of honor. Empress Pei-man was slightly startled, but she didn't show any signs of refuting. "What? Are you afraid that I'll take advantage of you and leave?" Song Qing-shu laughed. How could Gongzi be that kind of person? Not to mention, Empress Pei-man's fingers caressed his face as she giggled. Not to mention that Gongzi is such a handsome person. Even if he left, I wouldn't lose anything. Nyang Nyang truly knows how to please others. I wonder why His Majesty doesn't like coming to your place. Song Qing-shu reached out to pinch her smooth chin as he couldn't help but wonder. I only know how to please a real man. What kind of man is Wanyan Shui? When Empress Pei-man mentioned the emperor, her tone was not very respectful. Why isn't he a man? Song Qing-shu had a rough guess in his heart, but he still asked. Empress Pei-man blushed and carefully looked at him. "Don't be angry if I say it. Does Nyang Nyang think that I'm such a petty person?" Song Qing-shu smiled. Empress Pei-man moved closer to his ear and whispered, "Every time he comes in, he loses it. Does Gongzi think that he's a man?" Song Qing-shu was stunned. It can't be that tragic, right? No wonder he had heard that the emperor's temperament was eccentric and that he would kill his ministers at the slightest provocation. It turned out that his body's hidden illness had caused him to become a psychopath. Gongzi wouldn't despise me for being a broken flower, would he? Empress Pei-man suddenly asked. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. You were his wife. Why would you care about such a thing? Gongzi is truly open-minded. Empress Pei-man immediately beamed with joy. She picked up a grape from the table and peeled it before feeding it to Song Qing-shu. As Song Qing-shu ate the grape, he asked, "That's right. After the Song princesses escaped, how did the court react?" Empress Pei-man covered her mouth and laughed. Gongzi must be asking if they were being chased by soldiers? Don't worry. Right now, Wanyan Shui is completely focused on dealing with the Chongqing prince. He doesn't have the time to care about those small fries. With my help, they should have successfully returned to the Southern Song dynasty. That's good. Did you just say that Wanyan Shui is dealing with the Chongqing prince? Song Qing-shu asked. Yes, Empress Pei-man replied. In the past few days, the emperor has dismissed a series of officials for various reasons, and these officials happen to have one thing in common, which is that they are very close to Chongqing prince. Even Wanyan Tessie, the inspector of the palace, who has always been on good terms with Chongqing prince, but is barely neutral, has been dismissed by the emperor for dereliction of duty. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that the emperor is going to take action against Chongqing prince. These days, Chongqing prince is as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. I guess he can't even sleep. Haha, I don't think he can even sleep. Song Qing-shu frowned. Your Highness, forgive me for speaking bluntly. Now that the Prince of Wei is dead, the Chongqing prince is in a precarious situation, and Wanyan Shui's body doesn't seem to be able to hold on much longer. Once he dies and has no heir, the throne will definitely fall into someone else's hands. When that time comes, Your Highness may not be able to become the Empress Dowager. Your Highness's efforts seem to be benefiting others. I killed the Prince of Wei in order to protect myself. I didn't think too much about it, but now I have an idea. Empress Pei Man smiled charmingly. What idea? Song Qing-shu was most worried that she was secretly colluding with Wanyan Liang. Although this woman appeared to be extremely obedient in front of him, she had been the empress for so long. How could she possibly be a spotless white lotus? Song Qing-shu didn't dare to completely trust her. Although he hadn't discovered any substantial relationship between the two of them in the past few days, he still didn't dare to lower his guard. Young master, just mentioned that I can't become the Empress Dowager. The biggest problem is that the emperor doesn't have an heir. But what if I give birth to a prince? Empress Pei Man's eyes flashed. Song Qing-shu was startled. He hurriedly took her hand and began to feel her pulse. After coming to this world, he had been ill for a long time. Although he couldn't be considered a divine physician, he still knew how to feel a person's pulse. Empress Pei Man giggled. It's ticklish. Stop. I'm not pregnant yet. Song Qing-shu asked curiously. Then why are you so confident? Isn't Wanyan Xian a little impotent? It was no wonder he was cursing. Wanyan Xian had a harem of 3,000 beauties, but only 2 sons. One died young, and the other was killed. Very quickly, Song Qing-shu felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't much better off than Wanyan Shui. He had many intimate relationships with many women, but none of them had gotten pregnant. He didn't have the right to look down on Wanyan Shui. At the very least, Wanyan Shui had produced 2 children. Of course, Song Qing-shu had another reason. The main reason was that he came from the future, and these women in history always made him have a kind of ethical worry. Looking at Master Huang Yi's searching for Qin, Xiang Xiaolong lived a life of luxury in Qin. But Master Huang Yi did not dare to let him have a son, so he could only find someone else to adopt his son. Due to various reasons, Song Qing-shu didn't want to have a child so early. Therefore, he refined his energy in a qi and only shot blanks. However, he practiced the blissful dhyana, a secret technique of Tantra Buddhism. His mastery of yin and yang qi was unparalleled. Therefore, he knew his body's condition very well. He wouldn't be as miserable as Xiang Xiaolong. Empress Pei Man's charming laughter woke him up from his thoughts. I didn't have much confidence in relying on that useless man. But now that I have you, I'm very confident. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He asked in disbelief, What do you mean? Empress Pei Man twisted her body and sat in his arms. She moved closer to his ear and said, I want to borrow a seed from you. When our son becomes the emperor, will you lend it to me? Song Qing-shu felt his throat go dry. He had to admit that Empress Pei Man's suggestion was very tempting. If he could use this relationship to take control of the Jin Kingdom, it would be simpler and more convenient. However, Empress Pei Man might not be so easy to control. Despite the misgivings in his heart, Song Qing-shu was no longer the innocent youth of the past. Now, he was only interested in 2 kinds of women. One was a woman he liked, a woman with pure feelings without any utilitarian nature, and the other was a woman who was beneficial to his career. It was obvious that Empress Pei Man was the latter. It could be said that Song Qing-shu only hesitated for a few seconds before agreeing to the other party's request. Empress Pei Man giggled. Since Gongzi has agreed to it, shall we choose a prince now? Now. Song Qing-shu glanced at the window, which was incomparably bright. In broad daylight, wasn't she a little too daring? Time waits for no man. Who knows when that dead man will die? We have to get pregnant before he dies. Only then can we make him the crown prince. Empress Pei Man answered. Won't he be suspicious? Song Qing-shu frowned. I have my ways. Don't worry. Empress Pei Man giggled. Her white hand reached into his clothes. Song Qing-shu swallowed. For the sake of unifying the kingdom, let me sacrifice my chastity. Just like that, the days passed without any shame or impatience. Unknowingly, the birthday of the Jin Emperor, Wanyan Yu, had arrived. Too many things had happened in the capital during this period of time, so the palace decided to hold a birthday banquet for all the officials and their families to wash away the bad luck that had befallen them during this period of time. Early that morning, Song Qingshu entered the palace with Gobai. He saw Prince Changsheng, Wanyan Yuan, pacing back and forth at the gate of the palace and not entering. Because Madame Peach Blossom was still in the underworld, he did not have his family with him this time. He looked a little anxious. The officials passing by all noticed the abnormality of the court situation recently, so few dared to run over to greet him. Compared with the usual bustling scene, he was a little desolate at the moment. They're all a bunch of snobs. The Chongqing prince, Wanyan Yuan, thought bitterly. Suddenly, his eyes brightened. The person he had been waiting for had arrived. He hurried over. Brother Hailing King, Brother Hailing King. Looking at the somewhat embarrassed man in front of him, Wanyan Liang revealed a playful smile. Once upon a time, the Chongsheng prince was in the limelight. At most, he would call him King Hailing King. Today, he would call him Brother Hailing King. Did something happen to the Chongqing prince? Chapter 889. Wanyan Liang looked hesitant. He took a look and stammered. This, Wanyan Yuan panicked. Brother Hailing, with our friendship, are you going to leave me in the lurch? Didn't we agree to work together at the Autumn Fragrance Brothel? Wanyan Liang pulled on his sleeve. Keep your voice down. If the emperor hears this, I won't be able to bear the consequences. No one will be able to help you then. Brother Wang, I've been at a loss lately. Give me some ideas. Should I go to the banquet today? Wanyan Yuan asked anxiously. Of course you have to go. Today is the emperor's birthday. If you don't go, you'll be impeached by the imperial censor. The emperor is worried about not having an excuse. Wanyan Liang hesitated and added in a low voice, although you have to go, you have to be careful. It's best if you don't drink any wine today. What do you mean? Wanyan Yuan was stunned and didn't react. Throughout history, many nobles have been poisoned. Seeing Wanyan Yuan's face turn pale, Wanyan Liang knew it was about time. He quickly added, there are many things that I can't say. Brother, you have to be careful. Although he was panicking, Wanyan Yuan still looked grateful. Thank you, Brother Wang. Looking at Wanyan Yuan's staggering back, Wanyan Liang sneered inwardly. My brothers are all good-for-nothings. None of them can compare to me. Tu Danjing saw Wanyan Yuan leave and walked over. Your Highness, what did he say to you? Nothing much. He was just complaining. Wanyan Liang smiled. Tu Danjing said worriedly, recently, the emperor is obviously going to deal with him. Your Highness, aren't you afraid of getting into trouble by being so close to him? Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Wanyan Liang said as he held his wife's hand. Unexpectedly, Tu Danjing subconsciously pulled her hand back. Seeing her husband's shocked expression, Tu Danjing hurriedly said, someone is coming. Wanyan Liang turned around and saw Tang Quobian walking over with Gabai. Your Highness, long time no see. Song Qingshu cupped his hands together towards Wanyan Liang. At the same time, he glanced at Tu Danjing. Princess Hailing quickly lowered her head, her expression a bit unnatural. Her fair skin was flushed pink. Brother Tang Qua. After Wanyan Liang returned the greeting, his eyes kept glancing at Gabai. Today, she was wearing a green palace dress. Coupled with her slim and alluring figure, she gave off a feeling of being able to suppress all the other beauties. His wife, Tu Danjing, was also a famous beauty, but when she stood next to Gabai, she was obviously overshadowed. Originally, Wanyan Liang felt that he had suffered a loss when he sacrificed his wife's innocence that night. However, when he saw the incomparably beautiful woman in front of him and thought of the scene of her under him that night, he felt that it was worth it. However, if he knew the truth, that the one who accompanied him that night was just a prostitute, he would probably vomit blood in anger. The two couples chatted as they entered the palace. Although they were talking about serious matters, everyone had their own thoughts. Wanyan Liang was wondering when he could find another opportunity to swap places with Tang Qua and relive that night. But then he remembered that his plan was at a critical juncture, and he was afraid that he didn't have the time, so he hesitated. On the other hand, Tu Danjing seemed a little absent-minded. Along the way, she always felt a fiery gaze falling on her, causing her to involuntarily recall the thrilling experience that night. If it wasn't for the inappropriate occasion, her legs would have turned to jelly. Goodbye smiled, but her heart was cold. Wugula, I will definitely avenge you. When the time comes, I will make sure Wanyan Liang's family is broken. Song Qing-shu, on the other hand, was recalling what Wanyan Liang had said to Wanyan Yuan. Although he had been far away with his cultivation, he could have heard everything clearly if he wanted to eavesdrop. Why would Wanyan Liang be so kind as to remind Wanyan Yuan? Song Qingshu frowned. He felt that something was amiss, but he couldn't figure it out. The banquet was held in the Hall of Benevolence. Eunuchs and palace maids went in and out, preparing everything. The nobles and officials gathered in groups of 2s and 3s to chat. After Song Qingshu and his entourage entered the hall, Wanyan Liang suddenly said, "Madam, please accompany them for a while. I have something to attend to." Tu Danjing stretched out her hand, wanting to hold her husband's hand. Unexpectedly, her husband left right after he finished speaking, not giving her a chance to object. When she thought that she would have to face that man alone, she felt uncomfortable all over. Moreover, because the banquet was held in the palace, the guards of all the ministers were left outside the palace. Tu Danjing felt even more insecure. After Wanyan Liang left, the atmosphere became very strange. Tu Danjing was afraid to see Song Qingshu, but at the same time, she felt sorry for Gobai. If her husband hadn't messed around, Gobai wouldn't have lost her chastity that night. Gobai looked at the princess in front of her with interest. She knew that the princess didn't know that she already knew the truth. Seeing that Tu Danjing pretended to be unconcerned and chatted with her, Gobai felt very happy. "Wugula, did you see that? That bastard Wanyan Liang has been coveting me. I didn't expect that he would bring his wife into this mess. If you can see it from heaven, you must be very happy." The 3 chatted casually for a while. Gobai stood up and said, "Husband, accompany the princess for a while. I plan to go see some acquaintances in the palace." As a princess, Gobai grew up in the palace. What she said was reasonable. Although Tu Danjing didn't want to be alone with Song Qingshu, she couldn't stop him. She could only watch Gobai leave. Recalling that Gobai winked at him secretly when she left, Song Qingshu smiled bitterly in his heart. Gobai was usually gentle and kind, but when it came to revenge, she was very black-bellied. "Princess, there is still some time before the banquet starts. Why don't we take a walk outside?" Song Qingshu needed to place a chess piece by Wanyan Liang's side. Obviously, Tu Danjing was the most suitable person. It wasn't easy for him to have a chance to be alone with her. How could he not seize this opportunity? Tu Danjing's heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously took a step back and shook her head. No, I have to wait here for His Highness to come back." Song Qingshu didn't care about her refusal. He took her hand and walked out. His Highness has something to do. How can he come back so soon? Besides, didn't he just say that Princess will accompany me? Tu Danjing was almost scared out of her wits when he grabbed her hand. She subconsciously looked around. She was embarrassed and anxious. "Let go of me." Song Qingshu smiled and didn't pay attention to her. He continued to pull her out. "If you don't let go, I will call for help." Tu Danjing's heart was in her throat. If someone saw the current situation between the two of them, she would immediately fall into a situation of eternal damnation. "Princess, if you want to call for help, just do it." Song Qingshu held her hand tightly. He didn't have any intention of letting go. Some people nearby seemed to notice the movement and subconsciously turned their heads to look in this direction. Tu Danjing was so anxious that she almost cried. "I promised to go out with you. Let go of me." Song Qingshu smiled and let go of her hand. As soon as she was free, Tu Danjing quickly withdrew her hand. Coincidentally, the people nearby recognized her and greeted her. "Princess Hailing, why don't I see His Highness?" Tu Danjing recognized that the other party was an official who was close to her husband. Her heart beat even faster. She secretly took a few breaths to calm herself down. Then, she smiled and replied, "His Highness has gone somewhere else. He will be back in a while." After dealing with the acquaintances along the way, Tu Danjing found that she and Song Qingshu had unknowingly come to a secluded place. At this time, Cold sweat had soaked her underwear. When the cold wind blew, she felt very uncomfortable. Princess's acting is very good. Song Qingshu looked at her with a faint smile. Tu Danjing ignored his sarcastic remarks and hurriedly said, "Didn't I say that after that night? We have nothing to do with each other. Why are you still pestering me?" Song Qingshu shrugged disapprovingly. "That is just your wishful thinking. What did I agree? Then why did you pull me out at this time?" Tu Danjing said as she looked around, afraid that some eunuch or palace maid would pass by and see the two of them. She knew that the people in the palace were talkative. Even if nothing happened, they would be spread out. Moreover, the two of them had an unclear relationship. "What I want to do?" A strange smile appeared on the corner of Song Qingshu's mouth. He took a step forward and hugged her slender waist. He pulled her into his arms and whispered in her ear, "At that time, I wanted to F***CK princess." Tu Danjing was instantly dumbfounded. She never thought that the other party would be so direct. She was usually high and mighty, and no man dared to be rude to her. However, she did not know why. When she heard such crude and vulgar words, she actually felt an inexplicable sense of excitement. "Are you crazy?" In the end, reason prevailed. Tu Danjing pushed him away and looked at him in shock. "Of course I'm not crazy," Song Qingshu said as he reached out to pull her. Tu Danjing was embarrassed and angry. "Can't you see where you are? This is the Imperial Palace. If someone saw us, it would be a crime that would result in the execution of 9 generations. It is precisely because of this that it is more exciting." Song Qingshu pulled her into the forest at the side. "Don't worry. No one usually comes here. Quickly let go." Tu Danjing tried to pry his hand away. Unfortunately, after a long time, it was useless. Chapter 890. Tu Danjing pursed her lips and didn't know how to answer. Cooperate? What a joke. In the palace, it was a serious crime to do such a thing with her husband, let alone with another man. However, what the other party said made sense. The longer she delayed, the higher the possibility of being discovered. Furthermore, she didn't know where her husband went. If he didn't see her calling the palace maids and eunuchs to look for him, it would be even worse. While she was hesitating, Song Qingshu had already pulled her to the back of the small forest. Looking at the row of cabins in front of her, she was stunned. This is the imperial toilet, specially for the use of the emperor and his concubines. Other than the eunuchs who clean it, no other eunuchs or palace maids will come here. In addition, there is a banquet in the palace today. The emperor and his concubines won't come here. You can rest assured now, right? Song Qingshu had stayed in the palace for so long and was already familiar with these places. But Tu Danjing's mouth opened slightly. She was curious why this person was so familiar with the palace. "No buts." Song Qingshu pulled her hand and led her into a cubicle. Although this was a toilet, because it was for the use of the emperor, it was very clean. Not only was there no smell, but there was also expensive incense. In terms of cleanliness and comfort, it was even better than the toilets of the stars in her previous life. Song Qingshu closed the door casually and looked at the woman in front of him with great interest. Tu Danjing's face turned red and white. In the end, she sighed and gently untied her belt. She bit her lip and whispered, "Hurry up." "Princess, how can I dare to disobey?" Song Qingshu laughed even more happily. After some time, Tu Danjing pushed away the man on top of her with a red face. She tidied up her clothes and was about to open the door to leave when she was pulled back by Song Qingshu. She frowned and was about to get angry, but she heard him whisper, "Be quiet. Someone is coming." Tu Danjing hurriedly covered her mouth, and her heart suddenly jumped to her throat. She pressed her ear against the door and listened. Not long after, heavy footsteps came from outside. "King hailing, there are too many eyes in other places, so I brought you here to take a look. The words spoken here will come from my mouth and enter your ears. I do not wish for a third person to know." A slightly feminine voice sounded out. Song Qingshu recognized it to be Emperor Wan Yin Shui's voice. Tu Danjing, on the other hand, felt weak all over. The remaining flush on her face quickly faded, and was replaced by an endless paleness. This was because she had also recognized the voice of the emperor. What was even more frightening was that it seemed that her husband was also outside. As expected, Wanyan Liang's voice quickly rang out. As the saying goes, a subject who does not keep secrets will lose his chastity. This subject understands this principle. That's good. Wanyan Shui nodded. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Do you think that I have gone too far with Wanyan Yuan? He is my only blood brother. Is it possible that I misunderstood what happened in the laundry yard?" Wanyan Liang was startled. He had schemed for so long in order to get rid of the person closest to Wanyan Shui and slowly turn him into a loner. But from the words just now, it seemed that Wanyan Shui was not hopelessly stupid. He had clearly realized that he no longer had an heir. If he also lost his blood brother, then the throne would likely fall into the hands of one of the other branches. "Fortunately, I was already prepared," Wanyan Liang calmly replied. "Reporting to your majesty, in truth, if you want to determine whether or not the Changshan prince has a guilty conscience, this subject has a simple method." "Oh, quickly tell me about it." Although Wanyan Shui had always suspected that the Changshan prince was the culprit behind the incident in the laundry yard, he had only found some ambiguous evidence. As a result, he couldn't help but feel hesitant. When he heard that there was a simple method to determine the Changshan prince's true intentions, he was naturally very interested. Wanyan Liang's lips curled into a strange smile. Today is His Majesty's birthday banquet. When the time comes, His Majesty should find a chance to bestow wine to the Changshan prince. If he drinks it without hesitation, then it proves that he is loyal to His Majesty. If he hesitates, then it proves that he is not so upright and upright. Wanyan Shui clapped his hands in praise. "Wonderful, truly wonderful. Prince Hailing, you are the reincarnation of Zhuge." As the emperor, he naturally knew of the stories of officials who used poison wine to kill their ministers. This time, using wine to trick Wanyan Yuan was truly a wonderful plan. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue. This Wanyan Liang was truly sinister and ruthless. He had just told Wanyan Yuan not to drink wine, but in the blink of an eye, he had the emperor bestow wine to him. Poor Wanyan Yuan. He probably wouldn't even know how he died. In the end, he would still remember the kindness of Wanyan Liang's warning. Song Qingshu was glad that Wanyan Liang was always in the light while he was in the dark. Otherwise, if he was schemed against by Wanyan Liang, who knew what kind of sinister tricks Wanyan Liang would use? The two people outside continued to chat for a while, but there was no more valuable information. Soon, they left one after another. Song Qingshu then discovered that Tu Danjing had already collapsed in his arms like a pile of mud. "Princess, look into my eyes." The reason why Song Qingshu was so anxious this time was mainly because he wanted to use the special environment of the palace to completely break the defenses of Tu Danjing's heart. This way, the effects of the soul transfer technique would be twice the result with half the effort. In the end, she was frightened midway. At this time, Tu Danjing's heart was already as fragile as a baby's. He immediately used the soul transfer technique on her. Tu Danjing raised her head. When she saw the two incomparably dark eyes, her eyes also became slack. Song Qingshu took this opportunity to give her an order. Tu Danjing subconsciously muttered, "Yes, master." When Song Qingshu brought Tu Danjing back to the main hall, Wanyan Liang was looking around for his wife. When he saw the two of them returning together, he suddenly felt a little sour in his heart. Tu Danjing was kept in the dark, but he knew very clearly what happened that night. He also didn't know why Tang Quobian brought her out. "Madam, where did you go just now?" Wanyan Liang couldn't help but ask. Tu Danjing smiled slightly and replied softly, "I just casually strolled outside." "I see." Wanyan Liang looked at his wife suspiciously. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Tu Danjing's face was 3 times more beautiful than before. However, no matter how rich his imagination was, he wouldn't have thought that his wife was brought out by Song Qingshu to eat fast food. Chapter 891. Where did you bring Tu Danjing to? After taking a seat, Gubai intimately approached Song Qing's side and asked a question that was completely different. Everyone, please search for the complete story. What do you think? Song Qing picked up a glass of wine from the table and drank it. He had been busy the whole day and was a little thirsty. Gubai looked at the blushing Tu Danjing and could not help but spit. Hey, doing that dirty thing again. Song Qing smiled and put his arms around her. Jealous? He asked. If you don't like it, I won't look for her anymore. Gubai blushed. We are not real husband and wife. Why should I be jealous of what you did? This is obviously a jealous tone. Song Qing laughed. If that's the case, I won't look for Tu Danjing anymore. Don't. Gubai hurriedly grabbed his hand. Did you forget that you promised to help me get revenge? If you look for Tu Danjing, not only will I not be jealous, I will be very happy. You really aren't jealous at all? Song Qing immediately showed a disappointed expression. It seems that in your heart, I am just a tool for revenge. It's not like that. Gubai hurriedly explained. Actually, I feel a little uncomfortable. As she said this, her face became slightly red. Song Qing laughed and hugged her. He bit her ear and said something, which made Gubai respond to him with her fists in embarrassment. On the other side, Wanyan Liang saw Gubai's angry expression and thought of that night when she sang under him. He suddenly felt a fire in his lower abdomen. What a woman! Song Qing keenly noticed the look in his eyes and sneered, but his attention was not on Wanyan Liang. Instead, he was looking for Prince Su, Wanyan Yong, in the crowd. With the help of Gubai beside him, he finally found the legendary Su King. He was talking and laughing with a group of companions. He was handsome and had a scholarly air about him. He was an extremely charming man. Song Qing secretly nodded. This person's eyes were reserved, and he had a strange, calm temperament. No wonder Zhao Min would bet her life on him. At this time, Wanyan Yong appeared to be very cheerful, but Song Qing keenly sensed a trace of worry between his brows. It seemed that Zhao Min's mysterious disappearance had indeed made him suspicious. Song Qing's gaze shifted to Wanyan Zhongjia, who was on the other side. Wanyan Zhongjia was also quietly sizing him up. Noticing his gaze, the little girl fiercely glared back at him. Song Qing thought about the message that Wanyan Zhongjia had sent him not long ago, telling him that he had already dealt with the kidnappers. He couldn't help but sigh. Although he was slowly adapting to this world, he was still far from being ruthless. Song Qing's gaze continued to move. The entire hall was filled with familiar faces. The commander-in-chief, the minister Wanyan Zhongxian, the left prime minister Wanyan Zhongmin, and the right prime minister Wanyan Zhongbin. He had already seen them at Pucha Qiucao's coming-of-age ceremony. Pucha Qiucao was also here today. She was at her father's side, looking shyly at the nearby Yanghua. Unfortunately, Yanghua perfectly portrayed the cold and arrogant character of a tyrannical president. From beginning to end, he didn't even glance at her, only drinking his wine in a melancholy manner. Song Qing bitterly smiled and shook his head. This brat was able to flirt with women wherever he went. Although he looked unruly on the surface, he was actually a great lover. His love for Xiaolong Nu was unwavering. Not long after, Wanyan Yong came out from the back, and the birthday banquet officially began. All the officials stood up to offer their blessings to the emperor. After going through a series of complicated ceremonies, they could finally sit down and enjoy the beautiful palace maids singing and dancing while drinking wine. Today's banquet was quite useful. During this period of time, the imperial court had always been shrouded in a layer of terrifying tension. Looking around, although everyone's expressions were still somewhat grave, there was a hint of a smile on their faces. Soon, the song ended. Wanyan Yong waved his hand, indicating for the maids to withdraw for the time being. He cleared his throat and said, "Taking advantage of this occasion, I have a joyous matter to announce." Hearing his words, everyone raised their heads to look at him. Even Song Qing was filled with curiosity. The Jin kingdom was currently suffering from internal and external troubles. Wanyan Yong's situation was even more precarious. What joyous matter could he possibly have? Wanyan Yong swept his gaze across the crowd, and his gaze fell on Yanghua. When the king of Zhao was a guest at the Pucha family's residence, news came from his residence that his wife was pregnant. Overjoyed, he immediately arranged a marriage with the Pucha family. Unfortunately, the king of Zhao's heir later died in a foreign land, and his wife and son were also missing. From then on, the king of Zhao was unable to recover and soon passed away due to his illness. Fortunately, the heavens are merciful. Not long ago, the king of Zhao's grandson, Bingde, was able to acknowledge his ancestors and return to his family. I have decided to fulfill the king of Zhao's dying wish and personally officiate the wedding between Bingde and Xiaocao. Pucha Xiaocao's face was already red with embarrassment, and she hid her face in her mother's bosom. Beside her, her father, Pucha Ahut, hurriedly stood up to express his gratitude. "Thank you, your majesty." He was a man of his word. Although the king of Zhao's lineage had declined, he still remembered the engagement of the past. It was just that he could not stand the incessant persuasion of his family. In addition, he had heard that Yonggua had lost an arm and was now crippled. He had some misgivings until he saw Yonggua at his daughter's coming-of-age ceremony. He was indeed a man of striking appearance and was extremely capable. As a result, all his misgivings were gone. In order to quell the doubts within his family, he had specially requested the emperor to bestow a marriage. The Pucha family had always been close to the royal family. In addition, Wang Yinyong had previously received the king of Zhao's Wang Yanhonglia's kindness. Wang Yinyong had readily agreed to such an easy task. He had specially chosen a day like today to add to the good fortune. Song Qing had a strange expression on his face, thinking that there was going to be a good show to watch. Yonggua had already stood up and bowed deeply to Pucha Ahut. He said, "Uncle's love for me is something that I cannot repay with my life. But I am of inferior character and am definitely not a match for your precious daughter." Pucha Ahut's expression changed slightly. Wang Yinyong had thought that the Pucha family would not mind Yong's current decline. Pucha Xiaocao was a first-rate talent in terms of character and appearance, so he thought that Yonggua would be extremely happy. Who would have thought that Yonggua would flatly refuse? He could not help but be startled. But then he remembered that Yonggua must be young and shy, making excuses. He laughed and said, "Bingde, you and I are not strangers. This is an important matter of marriage. There is no need to be shy." According to seniority, Yonggua was his cousin and indeed not an outsider. Yonggua bowed again and said, "The emperor and Uncle Pucha have treated me with great kindness. If you have any requests, Yonggua will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. But regarding marriage, I really do not dare to comply." With this, everyone's expressions changed. Wang Yinshui's face darkened. He had personally offered his hand in marriage, but he had been publicly rejected. Wang Yinshui's face darkened to the point where it looked like it was about to drip water. Wang Yanliang groaned inwardly. He had gone to great lengths to bring Yonggua back, and had also spent a great deal of effort to help him take the position of an official. Firstly, he wanted to win over the king of Zhao's faction. Secondly, he wanted to use Yonggua's power to help him deal with Wang Yanzongxian. Who would have thought that just as he was about to reap the fruits of his labor, this would happen? Bingde, Miss Xiaocao, is as beautiful as a flower and has a good temperament. You were betrothed before you were born. Why would you refuse this marriage? Do you have any difficulties? Wang Yanliang hurriedly tried to smooth things over. He had to quickly calm things down before the emperor became angry. Otherwise, his previous investment in Yonggua would have been wasted. Yonggua looked apologetically at Pucha Xiaocao and said, "Miss Xiaocao is naturally very good, but I already have a wife. I will have to reject her good intentions." Wang Yanliang was shocked and asked hoarsely, "You're already married?" He had asked this question before, but he had no idea that Yonggua was married. Yonggua hesitated for a while and shook his head. "Not yet, but longer, and I love each other and have already decided to marry each other. If you're not married, then it's fine." Wang Yanliang let out a long sigh. "You can marry Miss Xiaocao first, and then marry longer. With Xiaocao's temperament and your current status, I'm sure she won't mind if you take a concubine." Pucha Xiaocao pursed her lips and didn't say anything. But Yang shook his head resolutely. Long treats me wholeheartedly, so I will naturally treat her wholeheartedly. In this life, I will not marry anyone but Long. Even Wan Yin Liang's expression changed when he heard this. He cursed in his heart and wanted to slap him, but he didn't dare show it. Seeing that a storm was brewing in the hall, Goodbye stood up and said, Imperial brother, Chiao Tsao is still young. Why are you in such a hurry to get married? Today is my imperial brother's birthday banquet. Let's put aside our private affairs for now. Once she spoke, the others all agreed. Wan Yinyu took advantage of the situation and grunted in agreement. However, everyone could see that his expression was dark and gloomy. After this small interlude, the joyous atmosphere in the hall was swept away. Everyone carefully observed Wan Yinyu's expression, afraid that they would accidentally provoke him and cause trouble. Wan Yinrui, who was sitting on the dragon throne, could see the expressions on the faces of the people below and felt even more frustrated. Coincidentally, he saw Wan Yinyuan, who was sitting at the head of the table, and couldn't help but think of Wan Yinyuan's idea. He said, Chongqing Prince, I have seen everything you have done for the Jin Kingdom over the years. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you. Servants bestow wine. Wan Yinyuan's eyes narrowed. What he feared had come true. He remembered Wan Yin Liang's words and had not touched a single drop of wine since the beginning of the banquet. Even when everyone toasted him, he only put the wine cup to his lips and pretended to drink. Could it be that Wan Yinyu had discovered his actions and was worried that he wouldn't drink, so he decided to personally bestow wine and force him to drink? Chapter 892. Wan Yinyuan's hands trembled as he lifted the wine cup. His movements were extremely slow, as if the wine cup in his hand was extremely heavy. Just as it was about to reach his mouth, it stopped, and his face revealed a look of struggle. Soon, everyone else in the hall realized that something was wrong and looked at him in surprise. Some of the more observant people even began to speculate that there was something wrong with the wine. For a moment, the atmosphere in the hall became extremely strange. Seeing that Wan Yinyuan didn't drink, Wan Yin Shui's anger rose again. He coldly snorted, Why doesn't Chongsheng Prince drink? Wan Yinyuan's expression made it seem as if he had made a great decision. He placed the wine cup on the table and replied, Reporting to Imperial Brother, I have been feeling unwell recently. The physician has instructed me to refrain from drinking. I hope Imperial Brother will forgive me. Unwell? Wan Yin Shui coldly laughed. Someone, summon the imperial physician to examine Chongqing Prince. Let's see what illness he has. Wan Yinyuan broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly said, I have been suffering from insomnia and night sweats and nightmares. The physician has instructed me to rest well and refrain from drinking. There is no need to trouble the imperial physician. After all, he had been in a high position for a long time and wasn't a complete coward. In the nick of time, he had come up with a plausible excuse. Even if the imperial physician arrived later, he wouldn't be afraid. As long as he insisted that there was something wrong with his brain, even the most brilliant imperial physician wouldn't be able to tell if he was lying or not. Is that so? Wan Yin Shui didn't comment and quietly sized him up. Just as the officials were beginning to worry that he would fly into a rage, he smiled and said, Since Chongsheng Prince is unwell, we won't urge you to drink. Many thanks, Imperial Brother. Wan Yinyuan hurriedly thanked him, but his heart was cold. He knew his elder brother too well. The happier he smiled, the more murderous he was. The banquet continued, but after Yang Guo's refusal to marry and Wan Yinyuan's refusal to drink, the officials had a strange look in their eyes. After staying for a while longer, Wan Yinyuan knew that it was too dangerous to stay any longer. He had been able to deal with the poisoned wine, but if the emperor made another move, he might not be so lucky. The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became. Very quickly, he used the excuse of going out to pay his respects and left. Wan Yin Shui narrowed his eyes, but didn't say anything. He waved his hand, indicating that he should leave quickly. After Wan Yinyuan left, there was a brief silence in the hall until a eunuch hurriedly ran in to report, Your Majesty, Chongsheng Prince said, What did you say? Wan Yinrui furrowed his brows. This servant, this servant doesn't dare to say. The eunuch was sweating profusely, and his entire body was shaking like a sieve. Bastard, I told you to speak. Wang Yanju slammed his palm down on the dragon throne. If you keep stuttering, do you believe that we won't skin you alive? Chongqing Prince said that he wasn't feeling well, so he excused himself and has already left the palace. The eunuch's words caused an uproar in the hall, not to mention that today was the emperor's birthday. Even on a normal day, an official entering the palace to see the emperor was not allowed to leave without the emperor's permission. Chongqing Prince's actions were tantamount to openly despising the throne and completely breaking off all pretense of cordiality with the emperor. Clang! Wanyan Rue threw all the wine jugs and blankets on the table to the ground. Come on, who's going to catch this bastard for me? All the officials in the hall looked at each other in dismay. They all knew that the battle between the emperor and Chongqing Prince had reached a climax. Although it seemed that the emperor had the upper hand, Chongqing Prince was also quite powerful. Until the last moment, who knew who would emerge victorious? Those who could sit in the hall were all wily old foxes. The reason why they didn't dare to express their opinions was that they were worried that Chongqing Prince would make a comeback. But more importantly, this was a matter between Chongqing Prince and Chongqing Prince. Who knew if the emperor would suddenly make peace between the two brothers? Those who had expressed their opinions in advance were immediately met with tragedy. In history, many people had worked for the emperor only to be betrayed by him. Such things happen one after another, and none of these wily old foxes were willing to take this risk. If no one is going, do you want me to go myself? Not receiving a response for a long time, Wanyan Rue suddenly became angry. I'm willing to go. Yang was suddenly stood up. Song Qing-shu was secretly shocked. Since when did Yang Guo become so enthusiastic about the Jin Kingdom's court battles? Wanyan Rue's anger turned to joy. I've heard that Bind is highly skilled in martial arts, so this task is most suitable for you. Take 50 guards and invite Chongqing Prince back. If he objects on the way, I allow you to use force. Okay, Yang Guo coolly said, then turned and walked out. Then everyone in the palace started whispering to each other. They were all discussing whether Yang Guo's actions meant that the king of Zhao's faction had completely broken off from the Chongqing king. But Song Qing-shu could tell from the expressions of the officials in the king of Zhao's faction that they were also kept in the dark. The banquet continued, but no one was interested in watching the dancing palace maids. Everyone's eyes unconsciously drifted in the direction of the entrance of the hall. Song Qing-shu inwardly shook his head. With so many things happening in the current strange atmosphere, it was better to end the banquet early. Staying here was simply too torturous. Soon, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from the entrance of the hall. All the officials turned to look, only to find that only the leader of the guards who had followed Yang Guo had returned. Everyone couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression. Wanyan Rue frowned. Where's Chongqing Prince? Where's Bingda? Your Imperial Majesty, Lord Bingda. The guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, as if thinking of how to phrase his words. The moment Lord Bingda left the palace, he used his lightness kung fu and disappeared without a trace. We chased after him with all our might, but we couldn't find a trace of him. Wanyan Rue was so angry that he laughed. Good, very good. My two brothers are doing very well. He didn't wait for anyone to react. With a flick of his sleeve, he turned and left. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. Yang Guo was really capable of doing something like this. Being forced to marry by the emperor, he decided to simply leave. He really had a character. Not far away, a clattering sound could be heard. It turned out that Pucha Chiozao couldn't hold the cup in her hand, and it fell to the ground. However, at this time, no one had the time to pay attention to her. Everyone was gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, whispering to each other. They all felt a storm brewing. Just like that, the banquet ended on bad terms, and everyone left the palace. This time, Imperial Brother is really angry. I don't know why Second Brother is in such a bad relationship with him. After returning home, Goodbye said worriedly. Although she and Wanyan Yuan didn't share the same mother, they were still brother and sister. Naturally, She didn't want to see her siblings kill each other. Chapter 893. Ever since he had rescued Song Yuan Xiao and the princesses of the laundry yard, Song Qingshu rarely stayed in the palace. Thus, he had specially established a secret channel for the two of them to exchange information. Having seen so many spy movies in his previous life, he naturally knew the necessity of a single line. Thus, although Empress Peiman had secretly sent people to investigate him several times, they still hadn't found out his outside identity. However, this didn't prevent her from spreading information. Seeing his strange expression, Goodbye couldn't help but ask what happened. It's nothing. I need to go out for a while. You rest early, Song Qingshu replied as he stood up. The palace had undergone great changes, and he didn't know what had happened for Empress Peiman to lie like this. Seeing that he wasn't telling the truth, Goodbye's expression couldn't help but darken. The two of them were living like a real husband and wife, but in the end, they weren't real husband and wife. Okay, be careful. Song Qingshu nodded and hurried to the palace. He was now very familiar with the palace and quickly made his way to Taiha Hall. Empress Peiman had already dismissed the eunuchs and palace maids. Seeing him appear, she couldn't help but reveal a happy expression. What happened? Song Qingshu hurriedly asked. That slut Tao Yao entered the palace. Empress Peiman gnashed her teeth. Tao Yao. Song Qingshu couldn't react for a moment. It's Changsheng Wangfei, also known as the Peach Blossom Lady. Afraid that Song Qingshu didn't know who she was, Empress Peiman hurriedly explained. It's her. Song Qingshu's heart trembled. Although he had never seen this person before, he had heard of her name from many people. He knew that she was a stunning beauty whose beauty was not inferior to Goodbye's. At the same time, she was also the object of Wang Yinshui's affection when he was young. Didn't you say that she's been staying in Changsheng Wangfei's fief? Song Qingshu asked in confusion. I'm afraid that Changsheng Wangfei's situation has been difficult recently, so she went to the capital as soon as she heard the news. It just so happened that Changsheng Wangfei's escape during the day angered His Majesty, so she specifically entered the palace to beg for forgiveness, Empress Peiman explained. Song Qingshu couldn't help laughing. Is this the great change in the palace you were talking about? That slut clearly knows that His Majesty once admired her. In the end, of all the bad times, she chose to enter the palace at night. Is there even a need to guess her dirty thoughts? Empress Peiman angrily said. Song Qingshu looked thoughtfully at her. It seems that Nyang Yang still loves Emperor deeply. Empress Peiman was speechless. After a long time, she faintly sighed. We have been husband and wife for many years. How could we not have any feelings for each other? However, my heart is still thinking about young master a little more. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. It was fine to just listen to these words. He was not so naive as to believe it to be true. Nyang Yang is in such a hurry to summon me to the palace. It can't be just to complain to me. Empress Peiman nodded. I want young master to eliminate that bitch. Song Qingshu's brows furrowed. Right now, she is with the emperor. This action is too dangerous. I cannot think of a reason to do this. Empress Peiman shook her head and hurriedly said, I am not doing this purely out of selfishness. His Majesty has always admired that bitch. If he is bewitched by that bitch and lets Changsheng Wang go this time, then wouldn't our plan fail at the last step? In the future, when the emperor dies, the throne will fall into Changsheng Wang's hands, and that bitch will be the future empress. How can I swallow this? A woman burning with jealousy was truly terrifying. Song Qingshu shrugged his shoulders. All right, I'll go over there to gather information and see if I can ruin their good deed. The reason he agreed was because Empress Peiman was an important ally of his. It was rare for her to ask him to do something, so if he refused too quickly, it would be too hurtful. Of course, becoming a knife in her hand was not something he wanted to see, so he only agreed to ruin the good deed between the two of them, not to kill someone for her. Many thanks, young master, but you must be careful. The Xingwa's martial arts skills are quite high. Empress Peiman reminded him. I know what I'm doing. As soon as Song Qingshu finished speaking, his figure disappeared into the night sky. Under the cover of the night, Song Qingshu quickly found his way to the Hall of Benevolence. Fortunately, Wanyan Shui had not yet returned to his palace, so although the defenses were tight, they were not impregnable. In addition, the Xinghua, who had the highest martial arts skills, was not present. With Song Qingshu's superb lightness skills, it was not difficult for him to sneak in. Not long after he entered the palace, he heard the conversation between Wanyan Shui and the Xinghua. "Where is Madame Peach Blossom? Your servant has already ordered the palace maids to take her to bathe and change her clothes. In addition, His Majesty has chosen to meet her in his palace." The hint is clear enough. If Madame Peach Blossom is still willing to come, His Majesty will naturally get what he wants. You dog of a servant. You clearly don't have that thing anymore, yet you still know so much about this matter. I have to share His Majesty's worries, even if I don't understand it. Well done. We will reward you well tomorrow. In a moment, wait outside the door. Without our permission, you're not allowed to come in, so as not to disturb her. Your servant understands. When he heard Wanyan Shui enter, Song Qingshu pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot and silently hid himself on the beam. I have really become a professional gentleman on the beam. Song Qingshu was bored to death from hiding and couldn't help but laugh at himself. He saw Wanyan Shui rummaging through the drawers and cabinets. After a long time, he finally found a red pill and secretly hid it on his body. Song Qingshu glanced at it and recognized that it must be some kind of aphrodisiac. He couldn't help but feel a natural sense of superiority as a man. Wanyan Shui was really a failure. He was clearly the emperor, but even though he had 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, he was powerless. He was about to face a peerless beauty, but he didn't have any confidence. Instead, he needed the help of medicine. It was enough for a man to be like this. As Song Qingshu's imagination ran wild, De Xing's voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Madame Peach Blossom, His Majesty has been waiting for a long time." A soft hum sounded. Not to mention Wanyan Shui. Even Song Qingshu's body went limp. This woman knows the art of seduction. Song Qingshu's heart trembled, and he hurriedly became 120% vigilant. As the woman walked leisurely, a clear and melodious sound rang out. Song Qingshu looked down curiously and couldn't help but tremble. A beautiful woman with creamy skin, almond-shaped eyes, and peach cheeks appeared in the hall. She was truly radiant and beautiful. She was dressed in a purple palace dress. Just by standing there casually, the hall was immediately filled with light. The woman walked closer and closer. Later, from Song Qingshu's point of view, he could only see her graceful back. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and the skin on the back of her neck was as white as jade. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. Although this woman was middle-aged, her beauty was not inferior to Zhao Min, Zhou Zhuruo, and the others. However, what surprised him even more was that this woman's face was already white enough, but the skin on the back of her neck was even whiter. If he wasn't proficient in the art of disguise, he wouldn't have noticed the subtle difference. Thinking of this, Song Qingshu was suddenly shocked. Could it be that this Madame Peach Blossom had also changed her appearance? Everyone can guess who this Madame Peach Blossom was. If you guessed wrong. Chapter 894. Madame Peach Blossom leisurely walked in front of Wanyan Rui and raised her skirt to bow. "Tao Yao greets your Majesty. Please rise." Wanyan Rui quickly reached out to help her up. "There's no need to be so distant between us. Back then, the etiquette between a ruler and an official cannot be ignored. Now that you are the emperor, of course Tao Yao cannot be as impudent as before." Madame Peach Blossom discreetly shrunk back, causing Wanyan Rui's hands to miss. Song Qingshu's eyes narrowed. The discreet dodging just now was a very high level of martial arts. This Madame Peach Blossom was becoming more and more mysterious. Wanyan Rui sighed. "We still hope that you can be like you were back then, smiling when you like it and scolding us if you don't." Madame Peach Blossom smiled slightly and quietly listened to him reminisce without interrupting. Wan Yin muttered for a while, and seeing that she had no intention of continuing, he couldn't help but feel bored. He ended his reminiscence and asked, I have a question that I have never understood and never had the chance to ask you before. Today, I want to ask you clearly. What question does your Majesty have to ask? Madame Peach Blossom replied. The beauty in front of him was so beautiful that Wan Yin felt as if he had returned to the time when he first saw her. Back then, I was about to ascend to the throne. So why did you choose Wan Yin Yuan? Peach Blossom Lady's eyelids drooped, and she lightly replied, This concubine prefers a wholehearted love and hopes that my husband can treat me wholeheartedly. Your Majesty already has 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. There is no need to bring up old matters. Wan Yin hurriedly replied, If I had you, why would I need 3 palaces and 6 courtyards? Song Qing-shu, who was hiding on the beam, heard this and felt goosebumps rise all over his body. Wan Yin was really a coward. Now that you are the emperor, you can have any woman you want. So why waste those things? It was the dead of night, and a man and a woman were alone. Why didn't you act in a Japanese literary film and instead acted in a bashful Korean drama? Your Majesty, please be careful with your words. I am now Changsheng Wangfei. Song Qing-shu heard that Madame Peach Blossom's voice was neither sad nor happy. There was no trace of fear in her voice at all. If she wasn't resigned to her fate, then she had enough confidence. So what? Perhaps he had heard Song Qing-shu's heartfelt words. Wan Yin finally regained the domineering aura of an emperor. You still have to come here today to beg me. Madame Peach Blossom took a deep breath and bowed to him. Prince Changsheng offended your Majesty today, but he did not mean to look down on the might of heaven. I hope that your Majesty can forgive him and let him go this time. Wan Yin sneered and sat down on a chair. He looked at the beautiful woman in front of him and said, The Changsheng prince left the banquet in front of everyone today. If I don't punish him, won't I be violating the laws of the court? Hearing his businesslike tone, Madame Peach Blossom sighed. After all, Changsheng King is His Majesty's younger brother. Then does he treat me as his own brother? Wan Yin slammed his hand heavily on the table. The Prince of Wei died for no apparent reason, and something strange happened in the laundry yard. All these years, he's secretly befriended high-ranking officials and even extended his claws into our imperial guards. Don't tell me you don't know what he's planning. Madame Peach Blossom hurriedly explained, The matter with the Prince of Wei and the laundry yard has nothing to do with our prince. Hearing her mention our prince, Wan Yin became even more furious. He interrupted her and said, That's enough. You don't have to. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I've already drafted an imperial edict to imprison Prince Changsheng in the imperial clan court for life. Madame Peach Blossom's expression changed slightly, and she hurriedly knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, please take back your order. You want to take back my order? Wan Yin expression suddenly became somewhat strange. Why should I listen to you? Madame Peach Blossom bit her lips and hesitated for a moment before saying, As long as your Majesty can let Prince Changsheng go, I'll do anything. Song Qing-shu, who was sitting on the beam, was originally drowsy from listening to the conversation. Now, he immediately became alert. He opened his eyes wide and looked down. The main show was finally starting. Anything? Wan Yin sat up straight, and his expression became ambiguous. You could do anything. Madame Peach Blossom's body trembled slightly, as if she was struggling internally. Song Qing-shu was immediately confused. Had he guessed wrong? Otherwise, her acting skills were too good. She vividly portrayed a woman walking between morality and shame. You should know what I want. Wan Yin slowly walked towards her. This concubine knows. Madame Peach Blossom pursed her lips. Just now, when the people from the palace brought this concubine to bathe and change, this concubine understood. But you still came. Wan Yin stood in front of her and looked down at the woman of his dreams. Thinking that she was already within his reach, his body under the dragon robe trembled with excitement. because this is the only way to save my prince. Madame Peach Blossom knelt on the ground with her head lowered. It was impossible to see her expression. "Raise your head," Wan Yin Shui ordered. When Madame Peach Blossom raised her head, he couldn't help but sigh. There was actually such a beautiful woman in this world. Compared to her, the concubines in his harem were completely ordinary. Wan Yin Shui supported her shoulders and helped her up. Looking at her smooth, jade-like face, he couldn't help but tremble as he stretched out his hand to hook her chin. "Back then, when you married Changsheng Wang, I swore to myself that I would obtain you in this life. Today, I have finally got my wish." Femme fatale, Wan Yin Yuan was also implicated by me. Madame Peach Blossom faintly sighed. "A woman of the highest quality like you should be enjoyed by the strongest man in the world. He doesn't have enough strength, yet he wants to have you. This is him courting death," Wan Yin Shui said coldly. "Tonight, serve me well. If I am satisfied, I will let him go for now." Song Qing-shu, who was on the beam, secretly gave a thumbs up. This was the domineering aura an emperor should have, but the following scene was probably not suitable for children. Should he watch from the side, or should he go down and knock him out and replace him? Song Qing-shu's mind couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. However, it was just a thought. According to his previous speculation, something must have happened next, so he focused 120% of his attention to observe the situation below. Wan Yin Shui felt his throat go dry and subconsciously swallowed his saliva. His hand slowly reached towards the clothes of the beauty in front of him, and before he even touched it, his mind was already imagining how alluring her body would be under this thin dress. Chapter 895. Song Qing-shu felt a chill run down his spine as he thought to himself that the women of this world were truly terrifying. Before, there was Tang Sire, and now there was Madame Peach Blossom. There was actually a trap hidden in her alluring red lips. It was truly impossible to guard against. As he thought about it, his expression suddenly changed. There couldn't be a woman hiding a trap there, right? If that was the case, which man would be able to guard against it? Song Qing-shu felt a chill between his legs. Lady Peach Blossom supported Wan Yin Shui to prevent the sound of a collision from alerting the guards outside the door. After helping him to the bed, she quickly let go of him and took out a handkerchief to wipe her hands. A disgusted expression appeared on her face. Throwing away the handkerchief, Madame Peach Blossom got up and began to wander around the room. From time to time, she would pick up some of Wan Yin Luo's memorials to look at, curling her lips as she read them. "Let's go, Vicente," Song Qing-shu groaned inwardly. Looking at Madame Peach Blossom's leisurely appearance, it was obvious that she did not plan to leave. Instead, she planned to stay here until daybreak. Could it be that he had to hide on the roof beam and eat dust for the entire night? I wonder how Wan Yin Luo will deal with it when she wakes up. Song Qing-shu's gaze shifted to Wan Yin Luo's body. He discovered that although his eyes were tightly closed, his face revealed a perverted expression. His entire body was unconsciously shaking. Another erotic dream? Song Qing-shu quickly reacted. It should be the effect of the pink smoke. It seemed to have the effect of confusing one's mind. No wonder she was so calm. Song Qing-shu suddenly realized that if he was not wrong, when he woke up the next day, Wan Yin Luo would treat the dream as reality and think that he had really gone to Mount Wu with Madame Peach Blossom last night. What a good medicine. Song Qing-shu was full of praise. When the time came, he would get some of this medicine, and it would be much easier to deal with Wan Yin Liang in the future. Madame Peach Blossom looked at it for a while. Perhaps she was tired. She threw the memorial away and muttered to herself, "Let's remove the makeup on my face first. My skin can't take it all night." Song Qing-shu's spirits were lifted when he heard this. It seemed that no matter which era a woman was from, she would always take care of her skin. This was perfect. He could see who this Madame Peach Blossom was. Madame Peach Blossom looked around and came to a table with a bronze mirror. She first took off the golden hairpin, then took off the earrings, and then started to gently rub her face with her slender fingers. Song Qing-shu watched with great interest, but not long after, his expression changed. A woman with a high nose, snow-white skin, and azure eyes gradually appeared in front of him. With one look, he could tell that she was not from the Central Plains. In fact, her current appearance was not much different from before. One could still see her shadow from before, and it was 70 to 80% similar. However, he didn't know how she did it, but after changing a few places, she managed to hide the biggest characteristic of her body. Although Song Qing-shu faintly felt that this Madame Peach Blossom's nose was a little straight, he only thought that she was a lady Taoist and didn't think much about it. He didn't expect her to be a foreigner. Even though Song Qing-shu had seen countless foreign beauties in his previous life, such as Sophie Marceau, Alice, Eva Green, Jessica Alba, Jennifer Aniston, Hayden Panettiere, Jennifer Connelly, Megan Fox, he was still shocked by the Madame Peach Blossom in front of him. Time seemed to not have left any traces on her body, and even if she stood together with Zhao Min and Zhou Zhuo, those who didn't know would only think that they were sisters and wouldn't think that she was actually a foreigner. She had the shyness of a young girl and the charm of a mature woman. At this moment, Song Qing-shu was racking his brains to think about who this woman was. With her peerless beauty and the fact that she was a woman from a different tribe, she would definitely not be unknown. Suddenly, he thought of the two beautiful women from the different tribes in the Golden Book. Princess Fragrant Fragrance's age was not right, damn it. Then there was only one person left, and that was the former #1 beauty in the world, Zishan Dragon King Tajkis. But according to the plot, shouldn't Zishan Dragon King and her daughter, Xiao Zhao, return to the Persian headquarters at this time? Moreover, the Jin Kingdom had known Madame Peach Blossom for many years, so he felt that the time did not match. Perhaps Song Qing-shu was too lost in thought, and unknowingly, his body leaned out of the beam. Coincidentally, Madame Peach Blossom was dressing up in front of the mirror and saw someone on the beam in the mirror. Madame Peach Blossom was shocked, but she quietly picked up the golden hairpin on the table. With a wave of her sleeve, the golden hairpin silently shot towards Song Qing-shu. Although Song Qing-shu was a little absent-minded, he still had the instincts of an expert. Sensing the danger, he hurriedly dodged to the side, narrowly dodging the golden hairpin that was about to reach him. She was actually able to use an ordinary golden hairpin to such a superb level. Song Qing-shu was even more shocked. With this hidden weapon technique, there were probably only a few people in Jianghu who could surpass her. A fragrant wind blew over. Madame Peach Blossom had already attacked with a gloomy face. Song Qing-shu tiptoed and hurriedly jumped from the beam to the ground. The other party also tiptoed and chased after him at an unparalleled speed. Compared to Song Qing-shu's elegance, there was another indescribable strangeness, like a ghost or a demon, like a spirit or a monster. Song Qing-shu frowned. Although her qigong looked a little familiar, after thinking about it carefully, it was very different from the qigong masters he had seen before. Very quickly, he laughed involuntarily. They were not people from the Central Plains, so the martial arts they learned were naturally different from the qigong of the Central Plains. It was not strange that he had never seen it before. The reason why Song Qing-shu wanted to dodge just now was because he was worried that their martial arts would leak out. The beam could not withstand the torment, and if it broke and alerted the guards outside, it would be troublesome. Now that he was on flat ground, he no longer had any scruples. Seeing that she was pressing him, he did not dodge and extended his hand to meet her palm. Before he could sigh at the feeling of her skin, he felt a bone-chilling cold air coming from his palm. Very quickly, it spread from his hands to his chest. This cold air was completely different from a Xianming god palm, but it was still something that an inner force expert could not guard against. Song Qing-shu frowned slightly. With the circulation of his power, the cold air disappeared without a trace. At that moment, Madame Peach Blossom's expression changed greatly. Just now, she had already understood that the other party's martial arts were far above hers. If she had not used a secret technique to dissolve the surging palm power on the other party's palm, she would have already vomited blood and been heavily injured. With a thought, she hurriedly tried to increase the distance between the two of them. However, How could Song Qing-shu give her the chance? He changed his palm into a claw and firmly grabbed her palm. One of Madame Peach Blossom's hand was restrained, so she quickly used her other hand to attack the major acupuncture point on Song Qing-shu's neck. The angle was extremely crafty and strange. If it was the first time an expert from the Central Plains encountered it, they might have suffered a great loss. However, Song Qing-shu had already reached the realm of returning to one's natural state. Although the situation of martial arts was ever-changing, the essence was not different in his eyes. His fingers gently brushed against her wrist. Half of Madame Peach Blossom's body was numb. So how could she have any strength left in her hand? He grabbed her palm with one hand and her wrist with the other. Seeing that she was still trying to resist, Song Qing-shu crossed his hands and used her own hands to lock her entire body up. "Who are you?" Looking at the comments, it seemed that no one had guessed it. Chapter 896. Because Madame Peach Blossom believed in her teachings, she was usually as clean as ice and as clean as jade. Other than her husband, no other man had ever touched her body, not even the Jin Emperor. Her current posture was as if she was hugging her chest, but her wrists were tightly locked by Song Qing from behind. Her entire body seemed to be nestled in his embrace, surrounded by a strong masculine aura. She could not help but feel embarrassed and angry. "Let go." Song Qing did not realize that their current posture was a little too intimate. His attention was now completely focused on guessing the other party's identity. "Who are you?" Seeing that he was unmoved, Madame Peach Blossom frowned. She lifted her knee and kicked towards Song Qing's lower abdomen. Song Qing tightened his legs, firmly clamping her legs. Madame Peach Blossom tried to pull her legs out a few times, but she was unable to pull her legs out. Seeing that her movements were getting more and more intense, Song Qing frowned. He extended his hand and pressed on her shoulder well acupuncture point. Madame Peach Blossom immediately felt that most of her strength was gone, and she no longer had the strength to resist. Your martial arts seemed to have the shadow of the Persian Ming dynasty. Song Qing frowned and recalled the scene of his battle with revered Ming. His opponent's strange martial arts were still fresh in his memory. Although this Madame Peach Blossom's martial arts were far from revered Ming's, he could still see some familiar shadows. He suddenly thought of a person and could not help but blurt out, "You are Zishan Dragon Queen Toshkis?" Madame Peach Blossom's delicate body trembled and looked at him in disbelief. "You have seen me before?" Before Song Qing could answer, Xingguo's voice suddenly came from outside the room. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty?" Song Qing and Toshkis simultaneously held their breath, afraid that Xingguo would hear something unusual. "Your servant just heard some movements in the room. Did something happen to Your Majesty?" Xingguo's voice continued to sound. Toshkis' expression turned cold. Now that she had removed her makeup, if Xingguo saw her, wouldn't her 10 years of hard work be in vain? She hurriedly looked at Song Qing. Her red lips slightly opened as she silently mouthed, "What should we do?" Song Qing shook his head, indicating that she should wait and see. Hearing that there was no reply from the room, Xingguo's voice immediately became more severe. "Your Majesty, if you don't reply, for your safety, this servant will come in." Sensing that he was about to push open the door, Song Qing's expression changed. He hastily released Toshkis's restraints and swept his gaze across the room. Since Xingguo had already raised his suspicions, he couldn't hide anything on the roof beam anymore. When the time comes, it would definitely be his main target of inspection. With Xingguo's cultivation, Song Qing wasn't confident that he could hide from him. No matter how he thought about it, the only safe place in this room was Wanyan Rui's dragon bed. Without hesitation, Song Qing leaped onto the bed and kicked Wanyan Rui to the corner of the bed. He then rolled up the blanket and covered the two of them. Damn it, squeezing in the same bed with a stinky man, it's really damaging to my reputation. Song Qing thought of the erotic culture of his previous life and couldn't help but feel a chill. Seeing Song Qing hide on the bed without hesitation, Zishan Dragon King subconsciously stamped her feet. Right now, she absolutely couldn't reveal her true appearance in front of the Xinghua. The dragon bed was her only hiding place. However, when she thought about the man inside, she couldn't help but hesitate. However, the door had already been pushed open. As long as the Xinghua took a few more steps, he would be able to see everything. Her face alternated between red and white. In the end, she clenched her teeth and shrunk back onto the dragon bed. Just as Song Qing was feeling disgusted with Wanyan Rue, a soft body suddenly squeezed into the blanket. He smelled a sweet fragrance that was different from that of a woman from the Central Plains. Their clothes were pressed against each other. When the skin under their feet touched, he felt a burst of warmth and softness. His heart couldn't help but ripple. The gloominess he felt because he had to squeeze in with Wanyan Rue was immediately swept away. Zishan Dragon King's entire body tensed up. Ever since her husband, Han Qinya, passed away, she had never been this close to a man. Even her nominal husband, Changsheng Wang, had never been this close. Thinking about the situation today, where she had no choice but to share a bed with a stranger, she felt very sorry for her dead husband. Qinya, everything I did was for our daughter. I hope you don't blame me. Zishan Dragon King secretly sighed. She and Song Qing were looking at each other. Their breaths were blowing on each other's faces. Zishan Dragon King's face turned slightly red, and she subconsciously turned her face away. Song Qing, on the other hand, was curious about another problem. Zishan Dragon King came from Persia, but she didn't have the common cumin smell of the West Asian people in his previous life. Instead, her breath smelled like orchids, and her breath was extremely pleasant. It was really strange. By this time, the Xinghua had already walked in. The two of them didn't dare to make any strange movements. They both focused their attention and listened attentively to the movements outside. After the Xinghua entered, his sharp eyes swept across the entire palace hall. He didn't discover anything unusual. Walking to the bedside, the Xinghua pretended to accidentally drop a string of prayer beads on the floor. He stooped down to pick it up and conveniently moved it under the bed. Still, there was nothing unusual. He couldn't help but feel suspicious. He clearly heard the sounds of fighting inside. Could it be that he had misheard? However, he quickly shook his head. His internal energy was profound, and he wasn't an ordinary old eunuch with poor eyesight. Something must have happened in the room just now. Thus, his gaze fell on the dragon bed. Your servant, Xinghua, pays his respects to his majesty. The Xinghua didn't dare to rashly open the bed curtain. Bumping into the emperor was not a small matter. Zishan Dragon King, who was inside the bed, frowned slightly. Right now, Wanyan Rue had already been knocked out by her. How could she possibly pay attention to him? Not hearing any response, the Xinghua became suspicious. His Majesty? Tadish knew that this couldn't go on. She opened her mouth and replied, His Majesty has already fallen asleep. Is there anything I can help you with? The Xinghua recognized Madame Peach Blossom's voice. This woman usually had a pure and clean appearance. In the end, didn't she still get slept with by the emperor? If she had chosen the emperor, she would have long had 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. She would have been doted on by thousands of people. She wouldn't have fallen to the point where she wasn't even recognized by the officials. Your servant heard some movements in the room just now. Thus, I came in to take a look. Although the Xinghua felt disdain in his heart, he spoke respectfully. There's nothing else. You can leave. Tadish intentionally yawned, as if she was still sleepy. Yes. Although the Xinghua verbally agreed, his feet seemed to have taken root and didn't budge. Tadish also noticed this. Her heart couldn't help but jump. Is there anything else? Madam, please forgive me. Your servant still needs to confirm His Majesty's intentions. The Xinghua replied in a deep voice. Didn't I say it earlier? His Majesty is asleep. Tadish intentionally used an extremely dissatisfied tone as she spoke. Your servant is shouldering a heavy responsibility. It's better to be careful. The Xinghua paused. Your servant has to open the curtain to confirm His Majesty's safety. I hope Madam can forgive me. Tadish was flustered. The Xinghua's martial arts were unfathomable. If he were to discover any abnormalities and alert the palace guards, not to mention her. Even if revered Ming were to come back to life, it would be difficult for him to escape. Chapter 897. Genius in 1 second remembers love go away. Speaking net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Song Qing-shu gazed at the neatly dressed woman in front of him and couldn't help but inwardly smack his lips. Sure enough, the more beautiful a woman is, the better she is at deceiving others. Moreover, she can deceive others without batting an eyelid. However, de Xinghua was equally experienced and wasn't moved by her words at all. "Madam, please be at ease. This servant is only a eunuch. Even if this servant were to see it, it wouldn't harm Madam's reputation." Song Qing-shu almost gave a thumbs up. Truly, it's never too late to learn. It turns out that one can actually use this method to take a woman. Wait a minute. Previously, he had also taken advantage of the yellow-robed woman in the same way. For a moment, his cheeks couldn't help but heat up. Hearing that de Xinghua was insistent on entering, Purple Dragon Queen Tashtish couldn't help but bite her lips. Of course, she couldn't let him see what was happening inside. If he were to see the Emperor being drugged, not to mention her own safety, the crucial point would be that her decades of painstaking efforts would all go to waste. Feeling de Xinghua's hand slowly reaching towards the bed curtain, Tashtish clenched her teeth and quickly undid her upper garment. Looking at the sparkling and translucent jade-like snow-white skin, Song Qing-shu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This woman took off her clothes without saying a word. What is she trying to do? Noticing Song Qing-shu's gaze, Tashtish's face turned as red as blood. She grabbed the blanket and covered herself while fiercely glaring at Song Qing-shu, hinting him not to speak carelessly. At the same time, she pushed him back into the blanket, exposing Wanyan Luo. By this time, de Xinghua had already lifted the bed curtain and happened to see Tashtish's back. Looking at the snow-white, tender and smooth skin on her fragrant shoulder, even if he was a eunuch, he couldn't help but feel moved. No wonder His Majesty yearned for her day and night. She is indeed a rare beauty of the world. From Tadish's angle, she could still see Song Qing-shu hiding under the blanket as he gazed at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. She was both embarrassed and furious, yet she had no choice. Because she had removed her makeup, she couldn't expose her true appearance to de Xinghua and could only face him with her back facing him. Facing away from de Xinghua meant that she had to face Song Qing-shu directly. Even though her chest was still covered by her undergarments, such a private side of her was actually exposed to a stranger. She was about to go crazy, especially when his eyeballs were rolling around, causing her to feel as though she wasn't wearing any clothes. "How much longer do you intend to look at my body?" Tashtish said coldly. In the end, it was all that damned eunuch's fault. If it wasn't for that damned eunuch, she wouldn't have had to resort to such a method. This servant wouldn't dare. De Xinghua hastily retracted his gaze, feeling inwardly ashamed. A eunuch like him actually lost himself in the sight of a woman. It was truly a disgrace to the eunuch circle. Seeing Tashtish's back facing him, he felt a little strange. However, after some thought, he assumed that she was the ever-victorious prince consort. Coming to serve the emperor today was a form of humiliation, and she probably didn't wish to meet him face to face. Just as de Xinghua was about to leave, he suddenly recalled the commotion he heard earlier. He couldn't help but ask, "Madam, did you hear anything while you were in the room?" "No," Tashtish coldly replied, hoping that he would disappear as soon as possible. "That's strange." De Xinghua revealed an expression of astonishment. He couldn't help but take another step forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, Your Imperial Majesty? What are you doing?" Tashtish's entire body tensed up. Her hands tightly gripped onto a corner of the blanket with such force that it seemed as though she would tear the blanket in the next moment. Suddenly, she felt that Song Qing-shu was lightly patting her hand. Thinking that he was taking advantage of her, she nearly fainted from anger. Her pink face turned deathly pale. "We've conversed for so long. Your Imperial Majesty should have woken up by now." Seeing that Wanyan Ruo remained silent, de Xinghua's tone immediately turned hostile. At this moment, Tish's mind was completely blank. She didn't know how to respond to him. Seeing that the Xinghua was getting closer and closer, about to discover that Wanyan Ruo had already fainted, Tish pondered whether she should make the first move and seize the opportunity to restrain him. However, when she recalled the rumors of the Xinghua's unfathomable martial arts, she hesitated. Even if she were to launch a sneak attack, the chances of successfully restraining him would probably be less than 10%. Just as she was at a loss as to what to do, a familiar voice suddenly resounded in her ears. "Dog slave, you've been nagging here all this time. Are you going to let us rest?" The voice was exactly the same as Wanyan Ruo's, but Wanyan Ruo was clearly still unconscious. Tish focused her gaze and saw the man under the blanket winking at her. So it was his doing. "This slave deserves to die. This slave deserves to die. I've disturbed your Imperial Majesty's rest. This slave will leave immediately." Through Tish's back, the Xinghua could faintly see Wanyan Ruo lying beside her. Furthermore, after hearing his voice, he no longer had any suspicions. He hastily bowed and apologized. "Leave. Without our command, you are not allowed to take a single step into this room." Wanyan Ruo impatiently said, Yes, yes, yes. Your Imperial Majesty, please enjoy yourself. This slave shall take his leave." The Xinghua smiled sheepishly as he bowed and retreated. He even considerately closed the door behind him. Witnessing the miraculous performance of the man before her, Tish was completely dumbfounded. She was also capable of changing her tone. Back when she was disguised as Grandma Goldenflower, no one could tell that a 70 or 80-year-old woman was actually a beautiful 34-year-old woman. However, she was only able to change her tone. It was impossible for her to completely imitate a specific person's voice. Thus, her voice was more or less different. However, this man's voice was exactly the same as Wanyan Ruo's. He could even imitate the aura of an emperor who had been in a high position for a long time. Even a wily old fox like the Xinghua couldn't see through it. He was truly formidable. "How did you manage to sit here?" After the Xinghua left, Tish couldn't help but ask. Song Qingshu shook his head and asked with a grin, "Tell me first, who are you?" Only then did Tish realize that her clothes were still disheveled. She hastily covered her body with her clothes in a fluster. Seeing that Song Qingshu was still staring at her, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. "You're still looking?" Song Qingshu shrugged his shoulders. "Such a beautiful scenery. It would be a waste if I didn't look at it." Tish was startled. She didn't expect this man to say such words so naturally. For a moment, she didn't know how to react. After a long while, she hatefully said, "You are the most shameless person from the Central Plains that I have ever seen. You are the most beautiful person from the Western regions that I have ever seen." Song Qingshu replied with a smile. Tish's breathing immediately hastened. She wanted to raise her hand several times, but ultimately put it back down. Noticing this, Song Qingshu couldn't help but ask, "Why? You don't intend to make a move? It's not like I can defeat you. Why seek humiliation?" Tish finally regained her composure and replied gently, "You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."